The man went to the hospital for a surgery, only to find out they operated on the wrong part. The cancer had already spread throughout his entire body. But when he found out, instead of getting angry, he clutched the lucky charm his wife had left him, and burst into hysterical laughter, because he felt that only a death that ended his bloodline entirely could finally appease his wife's departed soul. But when he opened his eyes again, all he saw was the dusty old double happiness character, still stuck to the window back in his hometown. Then you frantically searched inside and outside the house, and saw Zhou Yao completely naked, curled up on the earthen bed. At that moment, her large eyes were filled with nothing but dead, hollow despair. Her skin, once fair and flawless, was now covered in crisscrossing bruises. And seeing her again, the woman who had haunted your dreams for half a lifetime, you immediately became overwhelmed with emotion. You rushed forward and pulled her into your arms. There was so much guilt and longing you wanted to express, but in that instant, everything was stuck in your throat. You just started sobbing, full of regret. In your past life, you plotted to make Zhou Yao fall into the reservoir so that everyone in the village would see her disheveled state after being rescued by you. For the sake of her reputation, she was forced to marry you. But from the moment Zhou Yao stepped into your home, she never had a single day of happiness. After endless abuse from you, she finally jumped into the reservoir clutching your child. It wasn't until her brother pulled the bodies of the mother and daughter out of the water that you finally realized the truth. Even though you later rode the waves of the era, earning more wealth than you could spend in 10 lifetimes, the woman who taught you how to grow up with her own life was already gone. Just as you were basking in the joy of your rebirth, a piercing, heart-wrenching scream suddenly rang out. "Ah, get away, don't touch me." Seeing Zhou Yao trembling from head to toe right now, you finally remembered. This was the moment Zhou Yao, that money was borrowed from my parents to buy formula for our child. But you snatched it away just to spend it on booze. Thinking of what you've done, your hands tremble. You viciously slap your own face a dozen times. Soon, blood starts trickling down from the corner of your mouth. Zhou Yao. She watches your actions with a cold, mocking smirk. She can't even remember how many times this has happened. After all, every time you sober up, you get down on your knees to beg for forgiveness. But not even 2 days later, your fists and boots are raining down on her again. The weak, whimpering cries of the baby bring a glimmer of life back into Zhou Yao's beautiful phoenix-like eyes. She frantically throws on some clothes and scoops up our daughter. The sound of the baby crying wakes you up too. You jump out of bed, grab your clothes, and say, "Honey, wait for me. I'm going to go get something for our little girl to eat right now." As you say that, you sprint with your long legs toward the convenience store at the edge of the village. Old Man Huang at the store sees you approaching and asks with a grin showing his yellow teeth, "What kind of booze are you looking for this time?" "Uncle Huang, don't be like that. Can you just spot me some formula? I'll give you the money tomorrow, I swear." When Old Man Huang hears you asking for credit again, he glances at the swollen slap marks on your face. He doesn't say a word. He just grabs a bag of formula from the shelf and hands it to you. You thank him profusely and rush back home as fast as you can. When you get back inside and see your wife in the same state as when you left, a wave of sharp pain strikes your heart again. "Honey," you say, "I bought the formula. I'm warning you, don't you dare sell my daughter. If you do, I curse your Zhao family to have their bloodline wiped out." Seeing this, you freeze in your tracks, stunned. You vaguely remember something like that actually happening. Originally, you had planned to sell your daughter to a couple in town, just to trade her for booze money. What kind of absolute monster have you been? No wonder you died of cancer in your past life. You truly deserved it. And so, you set the bowl of rice porridge down on the rickety little bed. "I swear I will never sell our baby girl. I'm heading into town first thing tomorrow to find some work." With that, you turned and walked out the door. Once outside, you gave yourself a few hard slaps across the face. If you remembered correctly, this was the very month that Zhou Yao would take your daughter and jump into the reservoir. Just the thought of it made your skin crawl and your hair stand on end. Seeing that it was getting late, and with the house completely out of food, 20 minutes later you arrived at the base of the mountain behind your home and ripped the elastic band right out of your trousers. You fashioned it into a slingshot. Snap, you fired off a stone. A turtle dove flapped its wings and took flight. In your past life after you struck it rich, you had become obsessed with the sport of shooting. You had even spent quite some time practicing with a slingshot back then. After crouching in the grass for a good while, you finally managed to trap a pheasant in a net. You also used the slingshot to bag a few turtle doves. The doves were tiny. All 4 of them together weighed barely 1 or 2 pounds. That pheasant, however, was a good 5 pounds nice and plump. You tied everything together with some vines and hung them on a tree branch. Just as you were about to hoist it over your shoulder to head home, you suddenly realized that the things you'd hung up were gone. You were so terrified you broke out into a cold sweat. Had you run into a ghost or something? Suddenly, you saw a flash of light coming from the good luck charm hanging on your chest. This was the charm your wife had worn close to her heart in your previous life. It wasn't jade and it wasn't plastic either. It wasn't until the moment she jumped into the river to end her life that she finally took it off and threw it by the side of the reservoir. When you looked closer, the light from the charm had vanished again. You couldn't help but reach out and touch it. The next second you entered a mysterious space. Judging by the size alone, it wasn't even as big as your hospital room. After experimenting a few times, you finally understood. All you have to do is hold that amulet and you're in. And whenever you want to leave, just set your mind to it and you're out. With this kind of golden cheat code, you can finally turn your life around in this lifetime. On the way back home, you noticed that many houses were already using electricity, while your own place was still lit by a stinking sheep fat lamp. You carried your things straight into the kitchen. Once it was pitch black outside, you brought a massive bowl of turtle dove soup into the main room. Yao Yao, time to eat. I made some turtle dove soup to help with your milk. You called out 3 times, and only then did Zhou Yao slowly emerge from the inner room. When she saw that giant bowl of turtle dove soup on the table, she didn't rush over at all. She just stood there rooted to the spot, her eyes filled with nothing but resentment. In that moment, you looked at your wife dressed in nothing but rags and patches, and your heart ached with a wave of bitterness. In an era where everything was so scarce, Zhou Yao's beauty still managed to stand out. Yet you had been such a total scumbag. After getting her, you didn't even know how to cherish her. Seeing how guarded she was right now, even though you were dying to sit down and share a meal with her, you knew that as long as you were standing there, she wouldn't even think about touching the food. I'll go eat in the kitchen. You turned around and walked out. Zhou Yao stood there frozen, staring at that giant bowl overflowing with meat soup. A feeling of disbelief washed over her. Was she dreaming? Or was this supposed to be her last meal before he did something terrible? In the past, whenever there was even a scrap of food at home, you always made sure you were the one who ate your fill, while she was lucky to get a bowl of dishwater to keep her going. So even though she was starving, Zhou Yao didn't dare to take a bite. It wasn't until she walked to the doorway and saw you squatting outside under the window drinking your soup, and noticed a huge wild pheasant hanging by the kitchen door, that she figured you must have gone up the mountain to hunt for it. Only then did you turn back to the main room, pick up your bowl, and start eating. Once you finished dinner, under your wife's wary gaze, you took it upon yourself to do the dishes. You used to be such a bum, so this was probably the first time you'd ever done any real housework in this home. After finishing up, you thought back to the jerk you'd been all day, so you went and boiled a pot of hot water and carried it into the bedroom. Gently, use this water to wash up. With that, you set the basin down and hurried out. You sat by the doorway for a long time, and only then did you hear the soft splashing of water from inside. You looked up at the starry sky, calculating how to find a way to make some real money tomorrow, hoping to improve your family's situation as quickly as possible. It's already autumn now, and in winter the temperature drops to -20 degrees where water freezes the moment it hits the ground. Both your wife and child need new winter clothes, otherwise they're not gonna make it through the winter. Only when the splashing stopped did you stand up and head into the room. Seeing you suddenly appear, Zhou Yao was startled, turning to her side and scrambling backward. Don't come any closer. Seeing this, you cursed yourself for being such a complete animal before, and you knew her trauma wouldn't be fixed overnight. So you spoke in a gentle, reassuring tone. Wife, I'm just coming in to take the water out. After saying that, you picked up the basin from the floor and walked outside. Zhou Yao didn't even acknowledge you, and the moment you stepped out, she quickly put on her clothes. In the yard, you used the hot water your wife had left behind to give yourself a quick rinse. After all, in order to catch those few turtle doves, you'd been lying in the bushes for a long time. Once you finished washing, you sat down on the threshold, lost in memories of your past life. There was a period of time when some outsiders were always trying to go into the mountains to forage. They were afraid of getting lost, so they found you back when you were just loafing around to act as their guide. Back then, you just thought, those city folks had way too much time on their hands. I've seen enough of how they operate, so I've picked up a thing or two. I even know exactly where to find those wild dendrobium herbs. I realized I could totally go out and dig them up myself to sell. The moment that thought hit me, I felt a surge of energy. I grabbed a torch I'd tied together, packed some makeshift tools, and shouted to Tiantian from the living room, "Lock the door, I'm heading out for a while." You were gone the entire night. You didn't make it back home until 4 in the morning. As it turns out, I got pretty lucky. On my way down the mountain, I stumbled upon a civet cat's den. I managed to pull out a few little cubs that hadn't even opened their eyes yet. Once I got home, I quickly got everything sorted. I kept one in the kitchen and headed off to town with 2 baskets full of goods. The town was buzzing with people rushing around. I found a crowded spot and laid out the meat and the pelts from the baskets. "Hey kid, that's some nice mountain haul you've got there." I had originally figured if I couldn't sell them, I'd just take them back home and toss them in a stew. I could have shared the leftovers with my big brothers and sisters' families. But to my surprise, the moment I set up, someone started asking how much I wanted for the meat. An elderly couple saw me, a young guy, tanned dark by the sun, looking every bit like a local from the mountains. Since my price was reasonable, they bought 2 of them right on the spot. In these times, you need ration coupons to buy meat. So mountain goods like these were the only real option. They were happy to have a little something extra to feed their grandson. Before leaving, the old woman tugged on the old man's sleeve to get his attention, and he ended up buying all the pelts too. Said he wanted to make gloves for their grandson back home. Just like that, in under 2 hours, everything was completely sold out. After that, I took the large wild herbs I'd gathered yesterday to a well-known old-school pharmacy in town. When I brought them out, the old man behind the counter, peering through thick spectacles, looked like his eyes were about to pop out of his head. He gingerly took the herbs from me and began to examine them with the utmost care. He reached out, holding up his hand to show you a price. "How about this, little brother?" When you saw the price he was offering, you frowned ever so slightly. "Does this guy take you for some country bumpkin he can easily scam?" Without a word, you reached out to take your item back. The burly old man quickly reached out to stop you, stroking his goatee as he smoothed things over. "Hey, take it easy, little brother. If you're not happy with the price, we can talk about it right. $600, that's my final offer. I can't go any higher than that." Even though you'd accidentally snapped this valuable piece, it was clearly worth much more than what he was offering. But then again, you were in desperate need of cash. Your wife and child were back home going hungry. After a brief moment of thought, you decided to go through with the sale. You took the money and went straight to buy meat and flour. You had to hit up 2 different supply stores before you finally managed to find some powdered milk, a real rarity in these times. Just before heading home, you remembered the old tattered clothes your wife was wearing yesterday, the ones covered in patches. So you stepped into the only small, state-run department store in town. On your way back, you took a detour to visit an old hunter in his 70s. You gave him a stash of food, and in exchange you managed to trade for the old man's incredibly expensive and well-crafted hunting rifle. In this era, you need special ration coupons just to buy meat. If you really want to eat your fill of meat, you've got to fend for yourself. As you were nearing home, you spotted something. Your wife Zhou Yao was working in the fields with the baby strapped to her back. And when your older brother Zhao Zhenxing saw you walking toward them, he instantly flared up. "Where the hell have you been again?" Leaving your own wife to work the fields by herself. Seeing your brother standing there, you felt a sudden sting in your nose. "I went to town to get some work done," you replied. "I picked up some meat and flour while I was at it. Come over to my place tonight with your wife and the kids for dinner." Hearing this, your brother shot you a look of pure suspicion, looking you up and down, noticing the mud splattered on your pant legs, and then glancing at the basket filled to the brim with fresh greens. Your sister-in-law just steamed a pot of cornmeal buns at noon. "Have your wife take a few home later. We won't be coming over to eat. Wong Ho, you'd better treat your wife right." You didn't say anything else, just nodded and headed home with your gear on your back. You knew that to win your wife's heart, you had to start with her stomach. And so you started bustling about in the kitchen. By the time it was nearly dark, Zhou Yao arrived home clutching those few cornmeal buns. But the moment she stepped into the courtyard, she caught the scent of meat wafting from the kitchen. She hurried over to the kitchen doorway and saw you busy at the primitive stove. Zhou Yao had been working all day and was already so hungry she felt like she was fading away. She set the cornmeal buns down and headed into the bedroom. She placed the sleeping baby in the small bed, but when she turned, she spotted a tin of powdered milk on the table. The blood rushed to Zhou Yao's head instantly. She stormed into the kitchen and slapped you hard across the face. Are you planning to go pester my mother for money again? How could you be such a jerk? Caught off guard by her sudden outburst, you finally remembered what a scumbag your past self had been. You had indeed taken money, and you had indeed threatened your mother-in-law for cash. You scrambled to deny it. I didn't take any money. I earned all of this today. As you spoke, you hurriedly reached toward your waistband. Seeing this, Zhou Yao grew even more furious. She stepped forward and gave you another stinging slap. At a time like this, you're still thinking about that kind of stuff. Having been slapped twice, you were left feeling both pained and bitter. Seeing that Zhou Yao wasn't planning on stopping, you quickly pulled out the 5 yuan notes you had stashed in your waistband. Wife, please. This is the money I earned today. Just take it, Zhou Yao. As she looked at the bills being shoved into her hands, she felt the world start to spin. Seeing your wife about to trip, you reached out to catch her, only for Zhou Yao to slap your hand away hard. He couldn't wrap his head around it. A good-for-nothing slacker like you, actually earning this much money in just one day. What kind of shady, disgraceful business did he get into? What on earth are we supposed to do now? We just can't keep living like this. You saw that Zhou Yao didn't believe a word you said, and you were so desperate you almost dropped to your knees. I went up the mountain last night and gathered some wild dendrobium, and I just happened to stumble upon a den of civet cats. I traded those for 600 yuan bills. I already spent one to buy some food, and this is all that's left. As soon as he heard dendrobium, a glimmer of interest finally appeared in Zhou Yao's eyes. They say in the north there's ginseng, in the south there's dendrobium. That stuff is incredibly valuable, and while it sells for a high price, it only grows deep in the mountains. It's notoriously hard to find, especially in the pitch black of night, but then he thought about it. There really were blood stains by the well this morning, and there was civet meat stewing in the pot. Could it be that he really misjudged him? But how would he even know what dendrobium looks like? Under Zhou Yao's piercing gaze, you raised your right hand and swore, I swear I didn't do anything illegal. If I'm lying, may I never have children? Seeing his wife's breathing steady out, and noticing her eyes weren't as fierce as before, you breathed a sigh of relief. Yao Yao, hurry up and put this money away, and take some of this meat over to Big Brother's place. Let them have a taste too. Although keeping the money in your private space would be safer, handing the money over to your wife is the same as handing over the power in the household. Afterward, you served up a plate of stir-fried civet meat, along with some carp and tofu soup you'd stewed, and set them on the table in the main room. Then you went back to the kitchen, ladled out a full bowl of meat, and headed toward your big brother's house. On the way, you even remembered the money you owed old Huang for the rice flour. Following up on that conversation about the drinking money, it's been over 2 years since she married into this house, and all you've ever done is bleed him dry for every penny. Once everything was set up, you heard steady footsteps coming from outside. He walked out of the room. When he saw the steaming dish and the soup on the table, he was dazed for a moment, completely stunned. Then he went to the kitchen to take a look. The flour jar was filled to the brim. The oil jug was full and hanging from the rafters was a massive slab of pork belly weighing over 15 pounds. Has he really changed? Zhou Yao wasn't sure at this moment. After all, a leopard can't change its spots. Seeing Zhou Yao sit down, you placed a pheasant leg into her bowl. I'm heading up the mountain first thing tomorrow morning. Before winter really sets in, I need to scout every single spot where I might find some dendrobium. It's the fastest way to make some real money right now. Once the country fully opens up, I'll have the capital to invest in something else. Hearing your words, Zhou Yao was taken aback. She just nodded, not saying a single word. She figured you just got lucky last night, stumbling upon that one plant. How could you possibly be that lucky every time? Zhou Yao originally wanted to warn you that if you really want to make money, you should just get a real job. Even if it only pays a few dimes a day, it's still better than having no income. But thinking about your temperament, she figured as long as you aren't out gambling, she'd just let you drink if you really wanted to. She held her chopsticks, trying to move the pheasant leg back into your bowl. Seeing her do that, you quickly used the baby as an excuse to stop her. Wife, you're way too thin. Eat more or there won't be enough milk for the baby. No matter how good formula is, it'll never beat breast milk. Besides, formula is expensive and hard to come by anyway. This is crucian carp and tofu soup. It's good for your milk supply. That comment earned you a sharp glare from her. Her knuckles turned white from gripping her chopsticks so tightly. But in the end, she didn't refuse again. You've been running yourself ragged for a full day and night. You're completely exhausted. But at least you've finally figured out how to keep food on the table. Once you'd finished eating, you just told your wife, I'm going to sleep. You stood up bent over and crawled into bed. You were out cold the moment your head hit the pillow. When Zhou Yao finished doing the dishes and went back to the room, she saw the clothes you'd left on the floor. She frowned. Still, she picked them up and washed them by the light of the moon. After she finished, she dragged her tired body back to the bedroom. She wasn't paying attention and accidentally kicked the basket. Zhou Yao picked it up and took a look. To her surprise, it was a brand new outfit for a woman, along with 3 little sets of baby clothes. She stared at you for a long time while you were fast asleep. She thought to herself, I really can't figure this man out anymore. You slept like the dead, totally oblivious to the world. The baby girl woke up twice during the night, and she couldn't even manage to wake you up. It wasn't until the next morning that you finally blinked your eyes open in a daze. You rolled over and saw Zhou Yao curled up with her back turned to you. She was only wearing a worn-out little camisole, which made your heart race. After all, in your past life after Zhou Yao died, you never looked at another woman again. You reached out and pulled her into your arms. Everything felt so surreal, just like a dream. Just as you were about to lean down and kiss her, her body suddenly went rigid. She was clearly resisting your touch. You forced yourself to swallow the bitter taste in your heart and rolled out of bed. I guess she'll have to suffer through this for a little while longer, you thought. You took the clean clothes off the drying line. You didn't even care that they were still damp and quickly pulled them on. Then you tiptoed over and took the items out of the basket. You set them on the table. That's when Zhou Yao sat up in bed. She looked at you with a cold expression and said, if you really want to change, then go find some honest work. As long as I'm willing to put in the work, I can make $10+ a month. Our family will be able to get by just fine. Hearing your wife take the initiative to talk to you, you feel a rush of joy. You know Zhou Yao is looking out for you. But since heaven has given you a second chance at life, you have to make sure that by the time the economy opens up, you've saved enough startup capital. In your past life, after his wife and daughter were gone, you were like a stray dog, wandering the streets for a while. It wasn't until you met a benefactor later on that you had the chance to work as a clerk in a state-run store. Because you were charming and knew how to talk to people, you were eventually promoted to manager. And that's how you finally had the chance to step into a different world and rub shoulders with those big shots. In this life, you're determined to rely on your own 2 hands, to earn your first pot of gold as quickly as possible. That's why hunting and gathering dendrobium is the fastest way to make money right now. More importantly, you have the memories of your past life, so you know exactly where to find the good stuff. With such an amazing opportunity, how could you possibly let it slip by? The only problem is you don't know how to explain to your wife why you're so insistent on going up the mountain to pick herbs. Seeing you stay silent for so long, Zhou Yao knows your stubborn mule of a personality is acting up again, so she just pulls up the quilt and lies back down. In the kitchen, there's some cornmeal steamed bun left in the pot for you. Hearing his words, you see her face filled with unmistakable fear, and you immediately walk over to the bed, kiss her on the cheek and say, "Wife, I already talked to your brother yesterday. You don't need to go over and give them a hand today. When you have a moment, take half of that pork from the kitchen and send it over to your mother." Zhou Yao sees you coming closer and assumes you're annoyed and are about to hit her again. But she never expected you to pull a surprise move like that. She didn't even hear clearly what you said, nor did she notice you giving your daughter a quick kiss before you left. By the time he came back to his senses, you were long gone. In the dim, quiet room, it was just him and his little girl sleeping soundly in her small bed. Even though it was still early, I couldn't fall back asleep at all after that. I just lay in bed until the sun was high up in the sky. Suddenly, I heard someone pounding on the door outside. "Oh, second sister-in-law, what are you doing here so early? Is something up?" Liu Guihua's eyes were darting around, scanning the inside of the kitchen. She gave a greasy, fake smile and said, "Look at you, fourth brother's wife. I heard from the eldest sister-in-law that you guys had meat last night. Did your fourth brother hit the jackpot gambling or something?" Without even waiting for an answer, her feet seemed to have a mind of their own, inching their way right toward the kitchen entrance. "Good heavens, your fourth brother didn't go stealing or robbing people, did he? That's a huge chunk of meat. Do you have any idea how much that costs? The rest of us haven't even tasted meat in over half a year. My kids have been whining for days and I couldn't even bring myself to buy any." She finally managed to peel her eyes away, but then they drifted over to the dark, soot-stained wall. There hanging up was half a pheasant. She completely lost her composure, fourth brother's wife. "You really need to keep a close watch on your man. If he keeps gambling, he might even end up in a labor camp." When Zhou Yao heard this, her expression darkened little by little. What kind of talk is that, sister-in-law? If he's actually breaking the law, the police will be the ones to pick him up. You don't need to waste your energy worrying about that. Liu Guihua looked like she wanted to say more, but her eyes darted around, as if she had suddenly thought of something. She swallowed the words that were already on the tip of her tongue. Don't go making a scene, sister-in-law. I'm only worried about our fourth brother, aren't I? My husband and he are brothers after all. My little Bao has been crying because he's craving meat so badly. Do you think you could lend me 5 pounds of meat first? I'll have your second brother bring you the money later. After living together for these past 2 years, Zhou Yao saw her true colors as clear as day. I had already figured out what kind of person this second sister-in-law really was. A total bottomless pit. Giving anything to her family is like a meat bun tossed to a dog, it's never coming back. Just opening her mouth and asking for 5 pounds of meat like that. Don't even try to pull the I can't make the call excuse. Even if I had the final say in this house, there's no way I'd lend it to her. This is a huge deal. I can't make this decision. Second sister-in-law, just wait until fourth brother gets back and talk to him. As I said that, I walked over and bolted the kitchen door shut. Liu Guihua saw me acting like this. She was visibly annoyed but replied, fine. Just remember to tell him when he gets back. Make sure he brings the meat over to my place. As she turned to leave, the fake smile on Liu Guihua's face completely crumbled. Meanwhile, up on the mountain watching the daylight fade, I relied on the memories from my past life. It took a lot of effort, but I finally spotted a stalk of wild dendrobium. With the experience of fumbling around in the dark yesterday, by the time I had exposed most of the root system, the sun had already set. This one was much larger than the one I found yesterday. It wasn't until it was nearly pitch black that I finally managed to carefully dig up the whole thing, keeping it completely intact. Just as I was about to head down the mountain, I turned around and bumped into a sika deer. It looked like it had come specifically to snack on the dendrobium. Seeing this, I quickly pulled out from my storage space the hunting rifle I'd traded for yesterday. Within a heartbeat, a gunshot rang out through the woods, startling a flock of birds into a frantic scatter. Back home, Zhou Yao had already finished cooking. After preparing a bottle of milk for our daughter, she furrowed her brows, worried because I still wasn't back. Finding a master to learn from isn't that easy after all. He really needs to just settle down and learn a proper trade. Just as Zhou Yao was lost in her thoughts, I quietly slipped into the courtyard. It wasn't until I started unloading the things from my basket that Zhou Yao heard the commotion inside the house. She walked out cradling our daughter in her arms. Go wash up and let's eat. She said that, then turned and went back inside with the baby. You noticed your wife sneak a glance at the basket, but she didn't say a word. Once you got inside the house, seeing the steaming hot meal laid out on the table, your eyes welled up with tears. You honestly wanted to go back in time and slap yourself silly. Such a beautiful and virtuous wife. How could you have been so blind and never cherished her? You walked to the table and sat down, wolfing down the food as you said, wife, I'm going to the village chief's house in a little bit. I want to get our home connected to the power lines over the next few days. Zhou Yao's hand, which had been patting the child, froze. She couldn't help but speak up. Once we get electricity, we'll have to pay an electric bill every single month. She finished and snuck a nervous look at you, terrified that she'd set you off and you'd flip the table in a rage. You caught the look on her face instantly. You set your chopsticks down, walked to the door and brought the basket inside. Wife, I dug these up today. I'll take them to the pharmacy in town to sell soon. They should fetch a pretty good price. Zhou Yao stared intently at the wild herbs. She lifted her eyes to look at you, and in a tone of utter disbelief asked, You really dug these up yourself? You stood tall and continued to explain, I swear I didn't steal them or snatch them from anyone. This is the result of me spending the whole day digging in the mountains. Seeing how sincere you looked, Zhou Yao nodded, though she was still a bit skeptical. By the way, our second sister-in-law came by today. She wanted to borrow 5 pounds of pork. Seeing the long face Zhou Yao was making, it was clear she wasn't happy about it. You figured that while you were gone, the second sister-in-law must have given her a hard time. So you said with a serious expression, from now on you're the boss of this house. All the money and everything we own, it's all yours to manage. If you don't want to lend her anything, then we won't. Hearing you say that left Zhou Yao feeling uneasy. After mulling it over for a long while, she finally said with a huff, I don't want to lend it to her. Even though she said she was just borrowing, but he's definitely not going to give it back. It's not the first time he's borrowed things from us and never returned them. Hearing what Zhou Yao said, a relieved smile spread across your face. You gave her nose a playful doting flick. If you don't want to lend it, then we won't. We aren't going to put up with his nonsense. Zhou Yao was stunned by your smile. You then picked up your daughter, stood up, and went to prepare a gift. After you had eaten your fill, you washed the bowls and chopsticks, cut off half a jin of meat, and headed out into the dark. When the village chief Wang Xuanzhu saw it was you, his dark, weathered face froze for a second, but then he caught sight of the meat in your hand, and his wrinkled face beamed with joy. Zhao Kun, what brings you here so late? He asked as he took the meat from your hand. I'm looking to get some electricity set up at home. Could you find some time to help me get that arranged? I'll have that sorted for you by tomorrow. Hearing him say that you didn't linger, stood up to thank him and turned to leave. But as you walked toward the kitchen, you saw Zhou Yao in the pitch-black room, gnawing on the meat scraps and bones you'd left behind. The sight made your eyes sting with pain. It felt as if the blood in your veins had completely frozen over. Your voice was hoarse as you asked, "What are you doing?" When Zhou Yao heard your voice, she trembled in fear. The bone she was holding fell to the ground. She looked at you standing in the yard with absolute terror in her eyes. Please don't hit me. These were just the scraps you finished with. I just thought it was a waste to throw them away. At that moment, you felt like you'd been struck by lightning. You had never felt so defeated in your entire life. You dropped to your knees right in front of her. Zhou Yao screamed in absolute terror. What do you think you're doing? Zhou Yao lowered her gaze, looking at the man kneeling before her. Then she felt the warm, wet sensation against her chest. You were actually crying. Her long, closed heart seemed to soften just a little. Seeing your own wife, so terrified just from eating your leftovers, your heart broke. It felt just like a knife being driven straight into your heart. You stood up from the ground. You cupped your wife's pale, delicate cheeks in your hands. You lowered your head and kissed the tear from the corner of her eye. Honey, go wait in the main room. I'll bring the food in as soon as it's ready. You are my greatest benefactor. Zhou Yao didn't quite catch the meaning behind those words. Blushing like she'd seen a ghost, she scurried out of the kitchen. You spent a little while working away in the kitchen. Soon a plate of fragrant stir-fried pork slices was fresh off the stove. He felt the heat of the peppers burning his throat. He was eating a plain grain bun, yet his wife treasured it so much she couldn't bear to eat even a single bite. But the moment you stepped into the bedroom, a snow-white beautiful back caught your eyes. In an instant, your blood began to rush. Compared to money, you reached out from behind and pulled her into your arms. Wife, please don't ever leave me behind again. Lost in the moment for the very first time, Zhou Yao realized that doing something like this could be such a wonderfully pleasurable experience. It had been since their wedding night that the two of them had been this inseparable, sleeping soundly together. Thinking back to what happened last night, Zhou Yao felt her cheeks burning with heat. When she turned her head and saw the baby on the small bed, Zhou Yao's face turned pale with fright. Last night, it seemed she hadn't heard their daughter crying at all. Seeing his wife suddenly change expression, her eyes staring fixedly toward the side where their daughter was, you quickly hopped out of bed. You darted over to your daughter's small bed in a few quick steps. You saw that your daughter was already awake. She was wide-eyed, staring up at you and smiling. At that moment, watching your little girl, your heart just melted. You carefully scooped her up into your arms. You returned to the bedside. Seeing that their daughter was just fine and grinning at them, the heavy stone that had been weighing on Zhou Yao's heart finally fell away. Her tightly coiled nerves finally began to relax. Her eyes reddened immediately and she nearly burst into tears. She was so frustrated with herself, wondering how she could have slept so deeply through the night. If something happens to a child this small, what are we supposed to do? How would he even go on living? Sweetheart, why don't you go back and lie down with Niu for a bit? I'll get breakfast ready. Zhou Yao took a look at the diaper tucked under their daughter. Although it wasn't wrapped up perfectly, it was actually clean and changed. No wonder the baby didn't fuss or cry all night. So this guy actually got up and took care of her. Ever since the baby was born, this was the first time he'd ever taken the initiative to look after her. So has he really changed? Is it possible? Can I actually trust him again? Meanwhile, in the kitchen, you were busy working away with practiced hands. By the time your wife came out holding the baby, breakfast was already served. Tofu with greens, cornmeal porridge, and some multigrain steamed buns. You took the baby from Zhou Yao's arms, still shirtless. Hey, you go wash up first. Zhou Yao was a bit worried at first, but watching you clumsily, fumbling while holding such a tiny baby, she couldn't help but chuckle. She's your own daughter, she teased. She's not a tiger. What's she gonna do, bite you? While you were eating, the village chief Wang Xuanzhu showed up with the electrician. As soon as they stepped into the yard, they saw Zhou Yao sitting at the table having her meal. You were walking around the yard shirtless, carrying the baby in your arms. He caught a glimpse of a perfect, clear set of teeth marks on your inner bicep. He gave a knowing, meaningful smirk. Zhao-kun, you haven't even finished your meal yet. You hadn't expected Wang Xuanzhu to find someone so early. You led the village chief and the electrician over to the gate outside to chat. Once Zhou Yao finished eating and went back inside, you finally handed the baby back to her. You then reached into the pocket of your loose trousers and pulled out a pack of Da Qian Men cigarettes. The village chief looked at the cigarette you handed him, flashing a grin full of yellow teeth. You cheeky brat, he chuckled. You've really made something of yourself, haven't you? A pack of these things costs 40 cents, you know? The electrician standing to the side just gave an even more simple-minded grin. He tucked the cigarette behind his ear. Then, shouldering his ladder, he headed around to the back of the house. This job was definitely worth his time. He'd never even dream of smoking 40-cent cigarettes himself. This family was surprisingly generous. Once the power was hooked up, you headed back inside. You had barely stepped through the door when a piece of clothing came flying straight at your face. Before you could even figure out what was going on, you heard Zhou Yao say, "Hurry up and put your shirt on." Walking around shirtless like that, what kind of look is that? At that moment, there were a few scratch marks on your back. Those were the ones Zhou Yao had left on you the night before. The village chief and the electrician had both seen them, but neither of them had called it out. However, you were completely oblivious to all of it. You just kept wandering around with your shirt off. That had Zhou Yao feeling so flustered. She wished she could just crawl into a hole in the ground. But with outsiders around, she was too embarrassed to say anything. It wasn't until you left for the mountains that Zhou Yao covered her burning cheeks and took a long moment to steady herself. Only then did she proceed to take the bedding apart for a wash. She moved the baby's small bed out into the yard. She laid the child down on it, then filled a basin with water, getting ready to scrub the bedding. Just then, her mother walked over carrying a basket. Inside, there were eggs and a small piece of meat. When Zhou Yao saw her mother, she hurriedly wiped her hands and stood up. "Mom, what brings you here?" Her mother carried the basket into the kitchen, her gaze fixed on her daughter, looking her up and down. Seeing her in those old, ill-fitting clothes, her eyes welled up and she quickly looked away. She picked up her granddaughter from the small bed and said, "Things at home just wrapped up. I came over to see how you were doing." As she spoke, her eyes swept over those 3 crumbling mud brick huts. Her heart was filled with constant aching regret. "I never should have agreed to this marriage. I've ruined my own daughter's life." Yama's mom had been doing a lot of thinking. If you really can't make it work with him anymore, just leave him. You're still young, you have your whole life ahead of you. You can't let a piece of trash like him ruin your entire existence. When Zhou Yao heard her mother say that, she was stunned for a moment. She sat there on the stool for a long while, not saying a word. "That day when you snatched away the money I had borrowed from my parents, the money meant to buy rice and supplies for our daughter. Just to go blow it all on booze, I felt completely hopeless. Being with him, I just couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. I even started having thoughts of just ending it all. At that moment, I wanted to just hold our little girl and jump into the reservoir. But after you sobered up, you were so full of regret that you started slapping yourself more than a dozen times. And then in a total panic, you rushed out the door to buy the baby a gift. Over these past few days, I've been watching you and it's like you've really turned into a different person. You haven't been out running wild anymore. You aren't drinking. You aren't gambling either." Zhou Yao's mother saw her daughter hanging her head in silence and assumed she was worried about the child. She spoke up, "If you want to keep the baby, Mom can help you raise her from now on." She hesitated for a second, then added, "It's just that if you're stuck at home raising a child by yourself, it won't be easy to find another husband. In this day and age, divorce is practically unheard of. No matter how bitter or difficult life gets, a woman is expected to just grit her teeth and bear it." Hearing her own mother even think ahead to the complications of remarriage after a divorce, Zhou Yao took the baby from her mother's arms and said, "Mom, I'm not thinking about a divorce right now. He really seems to be turning his life around." As she spoke, she gently tugged on the brand new little outfit the baby was wearing. "He earned the money to buy these clothes for the baby, and he even bought a new set for me too. But I just couldn't bring myself to wear it." Mother Zhou looked at her daughter's fair, delicate face, seeing a glow of good fortune she hadn't seen in a long time. There was even a new sparkle in her eyes, and she couldn't help but be taken aback for a moment. Just yesterday, she had accidentally overheard Ermazi from next door say that he owed outsiders $50. With such a huge debt and him not doing any honest work, how on earth was he going to pay it back? That was exactly why she was so worried, bringing things over early in the morning just to check on her. But looking at her daughter's expression, it didn't seem like she was faking it. At this point, she decided not to tell her daughter what she had heard. She was afraid that if she brought it up, it would just cause a fight between them. Pulling herself together, she nodded with relief, her eyes welling up with tears. As long as you can change, that's all that matters. Then Mom can finally stop worrying. As she spoke, she reached up to wipe away the tears falling from the corner of her eyes. Meanwhile, you were just heading up the mountain, gnawing on a coarse grain bun, calculating how much it would cost to build a 2-story house. Based on the current market price for the herbs you were digging up, even after building the house, you would still have a sum of money left over that, in this era, would be considered a very respectable savings account. After all, there weren't many $10,000 households back then. Since you planned to stay in the village for the next 2 years, you wanted to improve your living conditions first. The 3 dilapidated mudrooms you were living in right now, once you stepped inside, you felt like you couldn't even stand up straight because of your height. Plus, the room was incredibly dusty, with bits and pieces crumbling off the walls everywhere. It really wasn't a place for people to live. At this moment, you had no idea that your mother-in-law was discussing whether or not to make your wife divorce you. If you found out about this, you probably wouldn't have the heart to go up the mountain to dig for herbs at all. After all, in this second chance at life, you knew that making money was what mattered most. But nothing is more important than his wife and child. He already knows the money-making tricks from his past life, so he doesn't need to rush for now. Seeing that it was almost noon, she didn't even stop for lunch and was eager to rush back home. She was terrified that if she took one extra bite, her daughter would have one less to eat. Zhou Yao tried to stop her but couldn't, so she quickly grabbed the meat hanging in the kitchen, sliced off a huge chunk, and chased after her, calling Mom, "Take this back for my little brother and his wife so they can have something to eat." When Zhou's mother saw such a big piece of meat, she shook her head repeatedly, refusing to take it. She was afraid that if your husband found out she was sneaking supplies to her maid and family, he might beat his wife again. And she was even more worried that her daughter wouldn't have enough for herself and would be mistreated. "You guys keep it and eat it. We're not short of food back home. Look at how thin you've gotten. You're basically skin and bones. You need to nourish yourself. Otherwise, how will you have enough milk for the baby?" In the end, the mother didn't take the meat. She just hooked her basket over her arm and walked away step by step. Zhou Yao stood at the doorway, watching her mother walk further and further away until she was out of sight. Only then did she carry the meat back into the kitchen. Next door, Zhang Gilan, who was about the same age as Zhou Yao, had been married for 2 years longer. Her skin was a bit dark, and as she hung over the wall munching on a raw radish, she called out, "Hey girl, you never step out of your house, so you haven't heard. The news is already spreading everywhere. Your second sister-in-law got a real beating from your second brother last night." The whole neighborhood could hear her screaming. Zhou Yao walked out of the kitchen, sat down on a stool in the yard, and gave a half-hearted, distant reply. Seeing that she wasn't saying much, Zhang Gilan pulled a stool over and sat down in front of her laundry tub. She lowered her voice and whispered, "The word on the street is, the oldest child in your second brother's house isn't actually his." When Zhou Yao heard that, the work in her hands came to an abrupt stop. She looked up at Zhang Gilan and asked, "That's your big brother's own flesh and blood?" Seeing the confusion in her eyes, Zhang Gilan shoved the half-eaten radish into her pocket and leaned in close to whisper gossipy, "Yep, it's true." Zhou Yao was completely stunned after hearing the whole story. She truly couldn't believe something like this could happen. She used to really respect that elder brother of his, thinking he was honest and reliable, fair in his dealings, and always acting like a proper big brother. But hearing this, she felt a bit put off deep down. How could anyone do something like that? Zhang Gilan seemed very satisfied with her reaction. She patted the young city-bred bride on the shoulder and said, "All right, I've got to head home to cook for my own man now. Can't chat with you anymore. That night you came home very late. Returning this time, you saw the lights on in the house from far away. You couldn't help but sigh to yourself. These electric lights are honestly so much brighter than the old sheep fat lamps." Seeing you come back, Zhou Yao hurried to bring out the dishes and the white flour, steamed buns she'd been keeping warm on the stove. She asked offhandedly, "Why are you back so late today?" Noticing there was some dirt on you, she put down the food and reached out to brush the mud off your clothes. You quickly stopped her, turned around, and bolted the front door. Then you pulled something out from under the straw pile in your basket and placed it carefully on the table 10 pots worth. I had an unexpected stroke of luck on my way back. You didn't tell your wife that it was because your foot slipped, and you only found this after taking a tumble. It took a lot of effort to climb back up, which is why you were so late. Nowadays, this stuff is worth just as much as dendrobium, selling by the gram. You had stumbled into a little fortune. You were planning to spend a romantic night with your wife and skip the mountains tomorrow, so you could head out first thing to sell off what you'd found. Zhou Yao looked at the dark brown object on the table, which looked a bit like a piece of ginger. I feel like I've seen this in a book before. She asked uncertainly, is this fleece flower root? Her voice was full of disbelief. You honestly hadn't expected your wife to be so knowledgeable. Most people in the village still have no idea how valuable this stuff actually is. If they did, all the treasures on the mountain would have been picked clean ages ago. Dendrobium and fleece flower root will stay valuable for maybe another 10 years or so. Once agricultural technology catches up later on, these can all be farmed. They'll be common in every market, and won't be anything special anymore. But even then, the price of wild, rare medicinal herbs will still be sky high, because honestly, you just can't find the wild ones for sale anywhere. You grinned, showing off your pearly whites, and pulled your beautiful wife into your arms. You leaned down and gave her soft, fair cheek a peck. Looking into her sparkling eyes, you said, "That's right, it is fleece flower root. Tomorrow I'll take you and the little one into the city for a stroll." The moment she heard you mention taking the child out, Zhou Yao's body went completely rigid. She remembered how you'd previously talked about selling your daughter to that family in the city, the couple that couldn't have kids. She was still terrified deep down. Who knows if they really couldn't have kids, or if they were just buying her to be a child bride. She pulled away from your embrace, and with a look of wariness and caution, she refused. "The little one is still too young. You two go, I'll stay here. Go on, wash up and eat." You immediately noticed that something was off with her. You had wanted to take her out to look around and pick up some winter clothes for her while you were at it. But seeing her get all guarded again, it was clear she was afraid you were still plotting something against your own daughter. All those rotten things you'd done in the past. It wasn't going to be easy for her to just let go of that trauma. The trust was long gone, completely overdrawn. You just have to take it one step at a time. You took off your shirt, which was covered in dirt, opened the door to go outside, and quickly splashed some water on your face. Then you headed back inside and sat down. She went back to her room and sat down. That was when he finally noticed the food on the table. A plate of golden scrambled eggs, and a small bowl of leftover stir-fried pork from the morning. Could it be that he didn't eat any side dishes at lunch? If he keeps cutting corners like this, how is he ever going to get nice and chubby? Looks like I need to hustle and earn more money, so he can finally feel at ease. "Wife, where did these eggs come from?" Zhou Yao kept her head down as she ladled him a bowl of thin noodle soup. "Not long after you left. My mom came by. She brought them over, but she didn't mention a word about her mom asking for a divorce. Not a single syllable. When you heard it was from your mother-in-law, you thought back to that time you asked her for money to go drinking. You felt so ashamed you couldn't even look her in the eye. You didn't even ask what the mother-in-law came over for. In your heart, you were already calculating. Once Brother Ming sells off what he's got on hand, you'll be the first to pay back the money you took from her before." You reached out, pulled your wife over, and sat her down, telling her to eat. As you spoke, you handed her a steamed bun made with mixed flour. Your wife still couldn't bring herself to steam pure white flour buns. She had steamed these ones with a blend of half white, half coarse flour. You picked up a cornmeal bun yourself and started wolfing it down in big bites. Zhou Yao took a tiny nibble of her bun, looking up to steal a glance at the man before her. If only things could stay like this forever. It's just that you don't know how long this sudden change of heart will actually last. While the two of you were eating, a voice started shouting from outside, "Brother, hey Erliudzi, come on out. We're one short for the card game. Everyone's waiting for you to come drink and play." When Zhou Yao heard that voice, her face turned pale in an instant. She stared straight at you, eyes wide, terrified that you might go back to your old ways, heading out to drink and gamble with them again. You froze for a second when you heard the voice, but immediately remembered who it was. You set down your chopsticks and looked up. Seeing my wife's pale little face, I quickly stood up and pulled her into my arms. "Honey, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" My voice was thick with worry and nerves. Zhou Yao, tucked into my embrace, with her slim, fair fingers, was clutching the front of my tank top tightly, her lips trembling slightly. "Are you going to go drinking and gambling with them again?" Hearing that, I finally understood why she was acting this way. It turns out she was just scared I'd fall back into my old habits. I rested my chin on her soft hair, my arms tightening around her instinctively, pulling her even closer. Her small frame felt so frail in my arms. Ever since she married me, she hasn't had a single day of peace. Even having a full meal has become a luxury. And yet, she still held on to hope for me, just wanting to live a steady, honest life by my side. I took a deep breath, fighting back the stinging heat in my eyes. In a low, raspy voice, I began to comfort her. Don't worry, I'm not going. I'm going to send them packing right now. And from now on, I won't be messing around with those guys anymore. Zhou Yao, who I was holding sideways, after hearing my words, lifted her face and stared straight at me, her eyes full of skepticism. She questioned me, "Are you really not going?" I lowered my gaze, meeting her anxious, searching eyes. I truly wanted to rip my heart out just to show her, to prove that I've really turned over a new leaf. I couldn't help but plant a kiss on her pert little nose, breathing out a warm, clean scent. I swear I'm really not going. Just relax, I'm sending them away right now. After that, I gently sat her back down on the stool. All right, keep eating. I'll be right back. I straightened up and noticed that my shirt was still gripped tightly in her hand. If I didn't know better, the three guys outside are nothing but bad news. I really want to take him out with me and have him watch me shut them down, just to give him some peace of mind. You lean down and kiss the top of his head again, trying to soothe him. With a hand that's rough, hot, and restless, you gently pat his thin, fragile back. Only then does he slowly let go. You stand up straight and stride with a powerful, confident gait out into the yard. You open the wooden gate. When those guys at the door see you come out, the one called Liu Zi gives a sleazy, mocking grin and starts spouting off vulgar jokes saying, "Hey, fourth brother, that's not cool of you, man. Your wife just finished her postpartum recovery, right? Are you so whipped you can't even leave the house now? It's been, several days? You haven't come by to grab a drink with us once." Hearing that filth coming out of his mouth, your brows knit together, sharp and imposing. You roar, "Screw you! Watch your mouth when you talk to me. If you don't know how to speak like a human, then keep your trap shut." The other two, who were laughing and joking along, see the look on your face and their smiles vanish instantly. They quickly try to smooth things over. "Come on, fourth brother. He's just got a dirty mouth, that's all. Don't take it to heart. Let's go, the guys are waiting for a drink." As he says this, he reaches out to throw an arm around your shoulder. You swat his arm away. You shoot them a cold glance. If it's about drinking or gambling, don't ever come looking for me again. I'm done with that crap. The three of them look at you like they've just seen a ghost. They look at each other totally stunned, completely caught off guard. That guy Liu Zi, still wearing that sleazy, pathetic grin, stupidly decides to keep pushing his luck. "Hey, fourth brother, did your little wife finally put you on a leash? Since she's already finished her postpartum recovery and all, just go grab a drink with the boys, why don't you?" Before he could even finish his sentence, you lunged forward and kicked him square in the chest, sent him sprawling onto his back. He lay there on the ground groaning in pain. You strode over to him calm and collected, and planted your boot right between his legs. You leaned down, your eyes cold and piercing, staring daggers at that piece of trash on the ground. "If you ever run your mouth like that again, I'll sew both your upper and lower lips shut, and break that third leg of yours for good." You ground your heel down into him for emphasis. Liu Zi, laying there, couldn't even care about his aching chest. He was clawing at your boot with both hands, desperate to get it off his crotch. He started shrieking at the top of his lungs, "Fourth brother! I'm sorry, I swear I'll never talk trash again." The other two guys were so terrified they looked like they'd seen a ghost. They couldn't even get a word out. You were radiating such a murderous aura that in the dark of night you looked downright terrifying. Not a soul dared to step in and stop it. They'd been scared of you since they were kids. Everyone knew when you got into a fight, you were a total madman who didn't care if you lived or died. But this was the first time they'd seen you this furious. You were like a starving tiger, ready to tear someone to shreds. It sent a chill straight down their spines. You were worried about dragging your wife into this mess. You had worked so hard to win his heart. You didn't want him to see you being this violent, just in case it scared him off. If he ended up being afraid of you because of some lowlife, that would be a total disaster. You stood up straight, glaring down at Liu Zi from above. You pulled your foot back and growled, "Get lost." The two guys were so relieved it was like they'd been granted a pardon. They scrambled to haul Liu Zi up. They stammered, "Fourth brother, we're heading out now." The moment the three of them were gone, you let all that pent-up tension drop. You walked into the courtyard. and slid the door bolt shut behind you. Ever since you stepped out, Zhou Yao has been a nervous wreck inside. She couldn't sit still, feeling like she was sitting on pins and needles. Every single second felt like an eternity. Seeing that you hadn't come back after such a long time, her heart was starting to lose all hope. Even though her stomach was growling with hunger, looking at the steaming meal on the table without you there, she couldn't bring herself to take a single bite. In just these past few days, seeing you slowly start to change for the better, she found that without even realizing it, her hopes for you had been reignited. She wasn't expecting you to be rich or successful. She just wanted to live a peaceful, stable life with you. But if you went back to drinking and gambling, what on earth was she supposed to do? The baby was still so small. She had absolutely no way to take the child out to work. Could it be that divorce was really the only way out? She was lost in thought when she heard the sound of steady, heavy footsteps. Her eyes instinctively darted toward the direction of the sound. Just then, your tall figure stepped in out of the moonlight. In that instant, the lifeless look in Zhou Yao's eyes suddenly sparkled with light. She couldn't believe that you hadn't gone out with those scumbags to mess around. She was still dazed, and you had already walked up behind her. You leaned over and wrapped your arms around her, then lowered your head to kiss her soft, fair cheek. What's wrong? Your man just went out for a little bit, and you already don't recognize me. As you spoke, you placed the chopsticks into her hand. You sat down at the table, picked up a cornmeal bun, and started devouring it in big bites. Zhou Yao was still struggling to process it all, and instinctively asked, "Are you really done hanging out with them for good?" "Yes, Commander Wife. I've completely cut ties with them. I'm never hanging out with them again." Only then did Zhou Yao nod. She began to eat in a slow and measured manner. While eating, she would sneak a glance at her man from time to time. Seeing that you were eating quickly, yet with such refined table manners, paired with that sharp, handsome face of yours, it was actually quite a pleasant sight to behold. Back then, besides the fact that he had saved her life, part of the reason she married him was because he was so good-looking. At the time, she was just completely blinded by his appearance. Combined with the need to arrange a marriage for her younger brother, she ended up marrying him when he was dirt poor. You saw your wife staring at you in a daze, wondering what was going on in that little head of hers. You placed a golden, delicious piece of egg on top of her bun, and with a smirk you teased her, "Eat up, darling. I'll let you get a good look at me in bed later." Your nonsense snapped Zhou Yao back to reality. Seeing that cheeky, mischievous look on your face, she shot you a fierce glare, then lowered her head, blushing, and buried herself back in her meal. After you were full, you weren't in any rush to leave. You lounged on a corner stool, eyes fixed intently on your wife. The more you looked, the more you adored her. Even though material goods were scarce in this era, with poor food and no fancy makeup, her skin was still as smooth as silk. She was even prettier than those celebrities who get all kinds of injections. You noticed your wife's hands gripping the chopsticks. Her knuckles were bright red. You reached out, took her slender wrist, and pulled it in front of you. Thinking about the bed sheets drying outside, you planned to sell what you had on hand tomorrow and try to snag a ration coupon for a washing machine from the black market. In this day and age, most people didn't even know what a washing machine was, let alone be willing to spend the money to buy one. If you had a washing machine, your wife wouldn't have to scrub clothes by hand anymore. Zhou Yao pulled her hand back, feeling completely flustered from your constant staring. "If you're full, go boil some water and wash up. You're covered in mud." You stood up and planted a kiss on your wife's cheek. Then he headed to the kitchen to boil some water. After you left, Zhou Yao put down her chopsticks and touched her burning cheeks. Ever since last night, that guy has loved to wrap his arms around her, and would even sneak in a kiss every now and then. Every time he got close, she could smell that masculine scent of his. She felt like her heart was doing backflips, pounding away in her chest. She couldn't even figure out what was happening to her. Once dinner was over, you pulled Zhou Yao aside saying you wanted to take her for a walk. On the way back, you didn't head straight home. You took her in a different direction instead. There stood a run-down mud hut next to the cattle shed, with a makeshift stove set up outside. A woman inside was clutching her chest, coughing incessantly. She grabbed a small handful of corn flour to mix with water, tossing it into a chipped ceramic pot. Just from those few steps, beads of cold sweat broke out on his face, rolling down from his forehead. A man with half-gray hair was just looking on with a pained expression, having strode over from a distance. He frowned as he took the water ladle from her, telling her to go inside and get some rest, while he took over the cooking. The woman looked up at him. The man handed over half a pancake he'd managed to trade for. "I got lucky today," he said. "I managed to trade for a pancake. I already ate half and brought the rest back for you. You need to eat so you can get better soon. Did you actually eat? She asked. The man didn't let on at all. He added a handful of rice to the pot, squatted down to start the fire, and said he'd already eaten. The woman, thinking about how weak she felt, offered the pancake back, saying, I'm not hungry. You finish it. I've been lying down all day, I just want something warm to drink. The man kept his head down, stoking the fire, and snapped, I told you to eat it, so eat. How are you ever going to get better if you don't eat anything? The man hung his head, his eyes stinging, and muttered, I'm full today. What are we going to eat tomorrow? He wasn't even taking care of his own body. That tiny bit of rice. He had to beg several villagers just to trade for it. His heart ached for the man working himself to the bone all day without a single meal, and he felt just as heartbroken that his partner had to endure all this hardship in the countryside with him. He gripped his hand tightly. Don't think too much about it. Just focus on getting better. First thing tomorrow, I'll head out to find you some medicine. I'm sure it'll cure you. Zhou Yao watched the scene, her heart feeling heavy and twisted. On the way back, she asked about the situation with those two. You fell silent for a moment. How are you supposed to explain you didn't really know the man either? But in your past life, you had seen him on the news. The old man had been a titan in the business world for many years. After he passed away, he donated his entire fortune. In his wife's name, he established a charitable foundation for medical relief. His whole life, the biggest regret he had was that he couldn't protect his beloved wife. He had watched her suffer through illness until she died. You relied on your memories to piece it together. This must be the very illness that took his wife's life. But you reckoned the root cause of her sickness was primarily due to severe malnutrition. You were planning to have your wife, this high school student, take the medicine. And you also had the funds to invest in this future mogul. At the very least, you'd have a study room for tutoring before the college entrance exams resumed. The next morning, bright and early, long before dawn, you opened your eyes as soon as you woke up. You quietly climbed out of bed. You walked over to the small crib. Carefully and cautiously, you picked up your daughter. You gently laid her down beside your wife. You tucked the little quilt around them both with care. After you finished cooking breakfast for your wife, you stepped outside and shut the door behind you, and began your journey for the day. It was market day today. Even though it was still early, there were already quite a few people on the road. During these times, back in the village, if a family could afford an old-school heavy-duty bicycle, well, they were considered to be living pretty well. So most people still had to rely on their own two legs to get around. Relying on memories from your previous life, you found it in no time, that large traditional Chinese medicine shop. The middle-aged man with a square face saw what you took out and looked you up and down. Then he picked up the dendrobium, examining it with great care. Once he realized this was top-tier wild-grown dendrobium, with every stem perfectly intact, he couldn't help but be impressed. He carefully placed the herbs on the counter and tentatively asked what price you were looking for. When he asked you to name your price, you didn't hold back and gave him a number right away. You knew full well he'd try to haggle. Sure enough, the moment the shop manager heard your price, he knew exactly what was up. He realized you weren't someone he could easily fool. He took one look at your basket and invited you into the back room. The two of you spent nearly an hour in that back room going back and forth. In the end, you sold him both stalks of dendrobium, a piece of fleece flower root, and the deer velvet antler. You were pretty satisfied with the deal you got today. You tucked away 500 ween in cash and walked out of the pharmacy. With money in your pocket, you headed straight for the state-run department store. You wanted to buy a washing machine, but the clerk's reaction left you stunned. You slapped your forehead in realization. Sure, washing machines exist, but they're only for hotels and laundromats. They haven't entered the average household yet. The first domestically produced washing machine won't appear until 1978, and it hasn't even been made yet. However, you did manage to get your hands on a ticket for a 9-inch black and white television. Without a second thought, you bought it, and picked up some stamps too. A meat ticket, or in plain terms, a hostage. That black market speculator saw you were a big spender, and he was extra friendly to you. When he heard you wanted to buy a TV that very day, he helped you track down an acquaintance with a tractor. For just $2, he'd haul everything all the way to your village. You didn't even think twice and said yes. Then at the state-run department store, you bought your wife a solid bright red sweater, along with pants and leather shoes. You also picked up several sets of brand new clothes for the kids, and bought a few thick new cotton quilts. You pretty much bought everything you could think of. It ended up filling half the cart. The guy driving the tractor was absolutely stunned. He couldn't believe it. A young man dressed in such rags could actually be this rich. Buying all that stuff in one go? By the time you finished your massive shopping spree, it was already the afternoon. Back at home, Zhou Yao woke up early that morning, and seeing the kids sleeping beside her, she realized you had snuck out without her knowing when. Zhou Yao dragged her heavy, aching body out of bed. She caught sight of the breakfast you had prepped before you left earlier that morning. On the table sat golden, perfectly cooked eggs, and pieces of meat that were still sizzling in their own fat. If Zhou Yao said her heart didn't flutter a little, she'd be lying. Meanwhile, inside the village, Wang Xuanzhu walked in with a young, bright-eyed girl in tow. Fourth brother's wife. This is Li Tiantian, an educated youth sent down from the city. She'll be staying at your place from now on. Go tell your husband to clear out a room for her. Zhou Yao was a bit flustered all of a sudden, with this young girl moving in out of nowhere. How were they supposed to manage in these 3 tiny dirt brick rooms? One room was for the 2 of them. The main room was for dining, and the other was filled with all sorts of clutter. There wasn't any room for her to stay at all, but the village chief wasn't home. I really can't call the shots here. Wang Xuanzhu's face crinkled up into a grin, his wrinkles bunching together. He waved his hand dismissively at Zhou Yao. He wasn't about to listen to a word the kid said. Instead, he turned to the educated youth beside him, gave a few instructions, and just walked away. Honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that the boy had gifted him that piece of meat earlier, there was no way he'd be sending such a fresh, beautiful young girl to live at that guy's place. This latest group of educated youths that arrived, all in all, there were over 20 of them. Most were strapping strong young men. Yet he'd specifically arranged for this delicate young girl to be placed right there. With that young couple already living there, the girl he sent over was even more wild than the guys. At least at home, there wasn't much to be shy about, and he wouldn't have to worry about his pretty young wife catching anyone's eye. Left behind, Zhou Yao stood there carrying a canvas satchel, sizing up these 3 dilapidated mud brick houses. A sinking feeling hit him. He realized that life from here on out would probably be even tougher than for the other educated youths sent to the countryside. The family Hong Mei was assigned to looked like they were living quite comfortably. It was a middle-aged couple, with 3 kids in tow. Everyone was dressed in clean, bright, and decent clothes. On the way over, he'd heard them saying that the man of the house he was assigned to was nothing but a piece of trash. He drank, gambled, and even beat his wife. The family was dirt poor, barely scraping enough together to put food on the table. Before he arrived, he thought the rumors might have been exaggerated, but seeing it now, it was clear every word they said was true. The woman of the house, despite wearing ragged, ill-fitting clothes, looked so soft, pretty, and her features were as exquisite as if she'd stepped right out of a painting. She didn't look like a country woman at all. Zhou Yao sensed that her gaze was currently looking him over intently. He lowered his head and checked himself out, wearing nothing but patched-up, raggedy old clothes. Right in front of Cho-Cho, this person stood there in a trendy, stylish dress, paired with white socks and little leather shoes. Looking all bright and polished, they pretended not to notice those judgmental eyes, and said, "Go ahead, have a seat. The house is a total mess right now, just packed with clutter. I'll have to wait for the head of the house to get back before I can clear a space for you." With that, they turned and headed inside, grabbing a thermos to pour the guest a bowl of water. Zhou Yao nodded, feeling a bit awkward, and sat down on a bench in the yard. Deep down, they were already calculating. They had to do everything possible to get that notice to return to the city for work. They didn't want to spend another single day in this dump, especially since they were stuck living in the home of some local thug. They'd have to be extra careful from now on, and make sure that Hoodlum didn't try to take advantage of them. Zhou Yao had originally planned to just grab a quick, simple bite, but now that a new city youth had arrived, they had no choice but to roll up their sleeves and start cooking a proper meal. Li Tiantian figured they'd be living there for a while, and didn't want to be a freeloader, so they washed their hands and headed to the kitchen to help their sister-in-law. "Why don't I handle the stove?" As they walked into the kitchen, they froze in their tracks. The shabby kitchen was actually kept remarkably clean and tidy, and hanging from the rafters was a huge slab of meat. Who said this family was so poor they couldn't even afford a meal? If they were struggling that much, how could they afford such a huge piece of meat? Zhou Yao was busy kneading dough with their head down, and hearing Li Tiantian's offer, looked up and said, "No need to help. If you've got nothing else to do, just keep an eye on the kid out in the yard for me." Li Tiantian nodded and stepped back out of the kitchen. They walked over to the small crib and looked down at the baby lying there, fair and delicate looking, just like a little porcelain doll. She looked so adorable. He bent down to tease the little one. He couldn't help but wonder why the lady of the house, who looked about the same age as him and was so fair-skinned and pretty, got married off so young. How could she have set her sights on such a good-for-nothing guy? He's nothing but a low-life hoodlum. Could it be that the guy forced her into it? And she had no choice but to marry him. The moment that thought crossed his mind, Li Tiantian felt a shiver down his spine. The more he thought about it, the more creeped out he got. He started wondering if he should head over to the village chief's house and beg to be moved somewhere else. Even if it meant living in a poorer spot, it wouldn't matter. As long as the man of the house was a decent, honest person, that was all he cared about. Meanwhile, Zhou Yao was busy in the kitchen cooking. She had no clue that the educated youth outside was currently going through such a mental drama. Big surprise? Before long, a steaming hot bowl of noodles was ready. Zhou Yao carried the noodles out and called out, "Hey, miss! Come have a bowl of noodles first." Li Tiantian snapped back to reality. Staring at the noodles in the big bowl on the table with little flecks of oil floating on top, she froze for a second. She quickly spoke up. "My name is Li Tiantian. You can just call me Tiantian from now on, sister-in-law." Zhou Yao just nodded and didn't say anything more. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a tractor came rumbling into the village. Following the directions you gave, it pulled up right in front of your house. Zhou Yao, who was in the yard holding some corn, suddenly heard the commotion outside. She quickly set down what she was doing, stood up and walked over to the gate. Just then, she saw you hop nimbly off the tractor. Her heart sank and she couldn't help but feel uneasy. Why did he come back on that rattling, noisy tractor? Before she could even open her mouth to ask what was going on, the tractor driver shouted at the top of his lungs, "Hey kid, you got so much stuff here, is your place even gonna have room for it all?" As he said that, he walked around from the front of the tractor to the back. I shifted the TV to the side little by little. I was terrified of accidentally bumping or breaking it. Then I lunged forward in one swift motion and hoisted the TV right off the truck. I flashed a wide grin at the tractor driver and said, "Don't worry, there's plenty of space where we're going." Zhou Yao, who was standing right there, was completely stunned by what she just saw. She asked blankly, "You bought all of this?" Her voice was trembling with total disbelief. "All these things, plus a TV. How much money and how many ration coupons did this even cost?" Looking at my wife's fair, beautiful face, and her eyes wide with shock, I stepped up and gently stroked her cheek. I knew deep down she was just worried about the cost. But to me, this little bit of money meant nothing. All I wanted was for my wife to live a life of luxury with me from now on. I never wanted her to suffer or struggle ever again. I leaned in close to Zhou Yao's ear and whispered, "I'll explain everything to you in a bit. You just step to the side for now. I don't want you getting in the way. Let me finish unloading this stuff first." Hearing my words, Zhou Yao moved to the side like a wooden puppet as she watched item after item being taken off the truck and piled up like a small mountain. She felt a wave of regret wash over her. If she had known it would be like this, she would have held the baby and gone into the city with me. How much money is he throwing away, she thought. Why is he so bad at managing the household? Where is he even getting all that cash and those coupons? Most families can't even afford a TV. Even just the electricity costs are a fortune. He's such a spendthrift, honestly. Standing in the corner, Li Tiantian, cradling her little baby in her arms, kept her eyes locked on that tall, broad-shouldered and long-legged young man. He was just supposed to be the local deadbeat. She had always assumed he was ugly and completely crude. She never imagined he would have such sharp, handsome features. A man with sharp, handsome features. In all his life, he had rarely seen such a good-looking man. It made his heart go thump-thumps, racing uncontrollably. Li Tiantian finally understood now why a woman as stunning as Zhou Yao had married so young. Turns out this man was even better looking than the movie star Wang Xingyang. Once everything was unloaded, you reached into your pocket, pulled out $2, and handed it to the tractor driver. The driver took the money, waved and drove off in the tractor. You started moving the items into the yard again. When your wife tried to help, you wouldn't let her, insisting she just sit and rest. You were so focused that you didn't even notice there was a strange woman at home. Zhao Zhenxing, hearing the commotion, rushed over. When he saw the pile of goods outside his brother's door, he was stunned. How could this lazy guy have the money to buy all these things? His family was usually so broke they didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, and they had nothing valuable to sell. Did he sell his own child? At that thought, Zhao Zhenxing quickened his pace. He reached the gate, and the moment he saw his little niece in the young woman's arms, his heart finally settled. Zhao Zhensing didn't say a word, just kept his head down and helped move the items into the yard. Staring at that heavy metal box, he watched as it lit up with pictures and sound the moment it was plugged in. It looked like a bunch of ants fighting on screen, so lively and fun, just like watching a movie. He circled it curiously a few times, too shy to reach out and touch it. He'd heard this thing was incredibly precious, costing several $100s. So this was the television the city folks always talked about. He truly couldn't believe it. I can't believe my own brother actually managed to bring one back. It's the only one in the entire village. Once everything was safely put away, Zhao Zhensing pulled you over to the front gate. He asked where you got so much money. You kept your cool, patted your chest, and told him, "I made all this money from hunting, selling the game I caught at the black market." You didn't tell your big brother about the dendrobium herbs. It wasn't that you didn't trust him, but those herbs only grow on steep, dangerous cliffs. Even if you told him, he couldn't really help with that. Plus, if word got out, it would just ruin your own way of making a living. Once spring rolls around and it gets warmer, you'll take your big brother and your second brother up the mountain to a few lucky spots. You'll show them the tricks of the trade, and after that, it'll be up to them to make their own way. Zhao Zhensing wanted to talk you into just sticking to farming, but seeing the spark in his younger brother's eyes, a sharpness and a depth he'd never seen before, it was like you were a completely different person. It made him, the big brother, feel like he barely recognized you anymore. Thinking it was rare for your big brother to visit, you decided to bring up the idea of building a new house. You asked for his help, promising him a daily wage of $1. Zhao Zhensing took a drag of his cigarette and said, "Don't be ridiculous. I'd work for you for free. I don't need any money. Besides, building a house is no small feat. It's gonna cost a fortune. Don't worry, big brother, I've got the money. I'm paying the wages regardless. Even brothers need to keep their accounts clear. Just do me a favor and find me a master builder who knows his stuff. And make sure we use high-quality materials. I want to be moved into the new place before the winter sets in." Zhao Zhensing nodded, assuming that his little brother just wanted to do some repairs on those 3 thatched huts. Little did he know, you were bold enough to actually plan for a 2-story house. The only reason you dumped all those tasks on your big brother's plate was because you were honestly run off your feet. You were figuring that you had to get all the dendrobium harvested before winter set in. If you ran into any other wild herbs like fleeceflower root, you could sell those for cash too. And if you happened to bag a Sika deer, grabbing some deer velvet or venison products, that would be like hitting the jackpot. Seeing it was still early in the day, the two of you put your heads together and went to find Wang Xuanzhu. Back in the planned economy era, you even needed a permit just to buy bricks for building a house, as the village chief Wang Xuanzhu was basically the man in charge during those years. You handed over a pack of Dachangmen cigarettes, and even slipped him a $1 bill. Smoothly, you walked away with the permit to buy bricks. With the permit in hand, you headed straight for the commune's brickyard to place the order for the construction bricks. Zhao Zhensing was baffled. Just how many bricks were you planning to buy? Fourth brother, exactly how thick are you planning to make these walls? When you told him you were building 2 stories, he was stunned by how many you ordered. Zhao Zhensing watched as you pulled out 2 $10 notes, the Great Unities, without even blinking an eye, and handed them straight to the brickyard boss. When he heard you say the rest of the balance would be paid off once the bricks were delivered to the house, Zhao Zhensing's eyes nearly popped out of his head. He found the whole thing absolutely mind-blowing. Those were actual $10 bills, not scrap paper. You just shoved them into your pocket like that. Weren't you worried about losing them? Zhao Zhensing realized that his brother, who used to be such a degenerate gambler, now carried himself with such an imposing air in front of outsiders. He looked more like a high-ranking official than the factory manager himself. Just standing there, you had this natural authoritative presence. If you had been wearing a crisp, unpatched blue worker's jacket, anyone would have believed you were the son of some top official. If it weren't for the mole on your neck and the old scars from your days of brawling and fighting, Zhao Zhensing would have seriously suspected that his fourth brother had been secretly swapped out for someone else. On the way home, Zhao Zhensing felt like he was walking on air, completely dazed and confused. Fourth brother, of course. But for some reason, he still felt like something was off. You pulled 5 10 yuan banknotes out of your pocket and handed them over big brother. Except for the lumber. I'll have to trouble you to take care of gathering all the other materials. Zhao Zhensing reached out to take them, but then felt like his hands were a bit too dirty. He wiped them on the hem of his shirt before taking the money. Zhao Jinsing said to you sincerely, "That's a lot of money. Since you trust your big brother this much, I'll make sure to get everything done perfectly for you." You nodded. "We're own flesh and blood, big brother. Why wouldn't I trust you? If it weren't for the way big brother and sister-in-law took care of things, considering the grievances my wife suffered in our past life, there's a good chance our daughter wouldn't have even made it into this world. She would have been lost because of my own foolishness." In the Zhao family's main room, Zhou Yao was tidying up the things you bought back. He dug a square cloth out of the cupboard and carefully draped it over the television set, terrified that even a speck of dust would dirty the screen. If you asked him why even buy this thing, the village loses power all the time and you have to set up an antenna. And when there's no signal, the whole screen is just static. But seeing how excited you were about it, he couldn't bear to complain about you spending money so freely. He realized you had bought things for him and your daughter again. There were women's sweaters, pants, leather shoes, and a few sets of clothes for your little girl. The jacket you bought him when you went to town last time, he still hadn't even worn it yet because he wanted to keep it pristine. And now you'd gone and bought him even more clothes. But seeing that you were thinking of them, the mother and daughter, Zhou Yao was still very happy. He picked up the soft, thick cotton quilt, getting ready to put it in the trunk, and couldn't help but shed a tear. This quilt was even better than the one made of new cotton he had when he first married into the family. It was such a high-quality item, much better than anything else. Zhu Yu realized that you hadn't bought a single thing for yourself. Yet your own shirt was covered in patches, and your shoes had holes worn right through them. Li Tiantian was helping by holding your daughter. She stared at those new clothes, itching to get her hands on them, visibly restless. It was like watching a cat fixated on a fish. That sweetheart neck sweater was the trendiest, most premium style you could find in the city. She'd been dying to buy one herself whenever she hit the mall, but her parents wouldn't hear of it. Spending half a month's salary on a single sweater, not a chance. And now seeing the very clothes she wanted but couldn't afford, laid out right in front of her, and not just one item either. Li Tiantian was absolutely green with envy, eaten up by jealousy and resentment. Zhu Yao's husband wasn't just handsome, he was a total catch. He was incredibly generous when it came to spending money on his wife. Plus, he was so attentive and caring. Just a moment ago, he wouldn't even let her lift a finger while moving their stuff. He was terrified she'd tire herself out. He doted on her like she was the apple of his eye. How could anyone claim men in this village were all the same? The idea that they were all lazy, good-for-nothings was complete and utter nonsense. You walked in not paying much mind to your surroundings. The moment you stepped through the door, you saw a strange young woman standing there holding the baby. She was smiling sweetly at your wife. "Is this a friend of yours?" you asked. Once Li Tiantian felt your gaze on her, she lowered her eyes, not daring to meet your stare. Even though she prided herself on being a city girl and always looked down on these country bumpkins. Ever since this man had returned on that tractor, looking all dusty and worn from the road, even though she had been standing right there the whole time, his eyes and his heart were focused entirely on his little wife. As far as he was concerned, she was the only person in the room. He hadn't even spared her a single glance from start to finish. Zhu Yao had been busy with her own chores. Hearing you ask that, she finally realized there was someone else in the house. The female educated youth had been standing there so quietly, and she had been so distracted with sorting through all the things you'd bought back, that she'd completely forgotten the girl was even there. Zhu Yao quickly apologized, took the baby from Li Tiantian's arms, and said to you, "She's one of the educated youths who came down to the countryside. The village chief brought her over. He asked if she could stay with us for a while. Hey, why don't we fix up the West Room? We could clear it out and let him stay there." Their voice carried a hint of hesitation, as if asking for your approval. Even though you're supposedly the head of the household, they still didn't dare to make the final call on their own. They were terrified of stepping out of line or doing something wrong. When you heard a stranger was going to be living in your home, your brow furrowed involuntarily. You honestly didn't want any outsiders around, messing with the quiet, cozy life you had built with your wife. But when you caught that look of hope in her eyes, the words of refusal just wouldn't come out. You were scared she'd think you were just being stubborn for no reason. You stayed silent. You pulled her into the back room first. You took off your outer jacket and pulled the rest of the money from selling those herbs out of a hidden pocket. You handed it over to her. Then you took the baby from Zhou Yao's arms and started playing with him. That's when you told her about your plan to build a new house. Zhu Yao took the money from your hands Looking at those stacks of crisp, brand new 10 yuan bills, she found it hard to believe. You'd already bought so many things, yet there was still this much money left over. 2 stalks of dendrobium, 1 fleece flower root, and all that deer antler and velvet. Were they really worth this much? When you brought up the idea of building a house, Zhou Yao quickly tucked the money away. Under your warm, intense gaze, she carefully hid this cash in a secret spot. Then she fell into a brief silence. If you didn't build a house, the money you'd made in these last 2 trips would be more than enough for the 3 of you to live comfortably for years. A secure, worry-free life, but if you actually started building, this money probably wouldn't be anywhere near enough. You'd end up buried in a mountain of debt. Besides, there was her younger brother. He'd helped your family out quite a bit over the last 2 years. Now that they had their own child to raise, they had their own mouths to feed. Now that they have a child, they have their own mouths to feed. How could I even have the nerve to ask for money again? Zhou Yao was just thinking to herself. You seemed to read her mind. You suddenly leaned in and kissed her on her soft, fair cheek. Honey, don't you worry about the money. I've got it covered. You just stay home and get some rest. Don't tire yourself out. That sudden soft, warm sensation on her cheek made Zhou Yao's face turn bright red in an instant. She shot you a glare with her beautiful eyes and whispered, "What are you doing? There are people outside. Have you no shame? Your skin is as thick as a fortress wall." You just looked at Zhou Yao with a cheeky grin. In your past life, you were incredibly wealthy. There wasn't a single social circle you hadn't been in. As you spoke, you leaned in closer again. Lowering your head, you planted a quick light bite right on her rosy, full lips. Looking at your wife's fair face flushed with a soft pink glow, your heart just melted. She's already a mother, so how is she still this shy? You decided to stop teasing her. You got back to the main point. You told her that your older brother would be ordering materials tomorrow. If he doesn't have enough money and asks you for some, make sure you don't forget to give it to him. Zhou Yao nodded silently. But deep down, something felt off. She remembered what the neighbors next door had said about the situation between the older brother and his wife. Every time she saw the older brother now, it just bothered her. You noticed the change in your wife's expression. You leaned in, pressing your face against hers and asked, "What's wrong, honey? If something's bothering you, don't keep it bottled up." Zhou Yao thought about it, but then shook her head. She didn't say a word. Seeing that she didn't want to talk, you didn't push her any further. Meanwhile, Li Tiantian was standing in the main room, having vaguely overheard Zhou Yao mentioning that there were people outside. Her face turned as red as a tomato. She stepped softly into the middle of the courtyard and took a deep breath of fresh air. For some inexplicable reason, I stopped in my tracks, deciding not to go look for the village chief, to change my lodging arrangements. This man of the house doesn't seem nearly as awful as the villagers make him out to be. Just a moment ago, while the young wife was tidying up their things, he was just standing there holding their child. I saw it all crystal clear. Most of those items were just daily household goods, along with some clothes for the wife and the baby. Yet I didn't see a single thing that belonged to a man. While Li Tiantian was standing in the courtyard lost in thought, the little girl in your arms had already fallen into a sweet, sound sleep. Her adorable doll-like face looked so peaceful. You turned around gently, laid the sleeping little princess down on the bed with the utmost care, and tucked her in cautiously. Shortly after, Zhou Yao walked out from the room and said to Li Tiantian, "I'm sorry you have to settle for this tonight. It's just for now. The west room is a bit cluttered, and my husband probably won't be able to clear it all out right away." When Li Tiantian heard what Zhou Yao said, she turned her head and saw his face was flushed red. She couldn't help but think back to the whispers she'd faintly heard, coming from the couple's room earlier, and her own face began to heat up. She quickly looked away to avoid his gaze. "It's no trouble at all, and thank you and your husband for the help," Li Tiantian replied in a rush. Zhou Yao smiled and shook her head at Li Tiantian, saying, "As long as you don't mind that our home is a bit poor." As she spoke, she bent down, intending to move her daughter's little wooden crib into their east room. Seeing this, you immediately rushed over to help. Zhou Yao gave a small smile, then turned and headed to the west room. You wanted to help tidy up too, but the man who had been working shirtless, because his wife kept insisting on it, had finally pulled on a white tank top. His muscular, well-defined arms were still exposed, radiating a sense of raw masculine strength. The tank top covered his broad back, hiding the various deep and shallow scratch marks left behind. You had no idea why your wife insisted you wear a tank top. You just grabbed a few bamboo rakes, planning to move them out to the yard. You had barely started working When you saw your wife walking in rolling up her sleeves, you quickly tried to stop her. Honey, you don't need to help with this. It's so dusty in here. You should go back out and wait in the yard. As you said that seeing Zhou Yao wouldn't listen, you got anxious. You dropped the bamboo fences and started pushing her outside. Your heart just ached for her. How could you let her come in here and help with all this dust? If it weren't for the fact that you're building a house soon, and you'll have a bunch of guys coming and going, you never would have let this female educated youth stay in your home. But then again, having Zhou Yao around does have its perks. When you're up in the mountains hunting for tigers or whatever, she can keep your wife company, chat with her and keep her from getting bored. Li Tiantian saw you pushing Zhou Yao out, and couldn't help but cover her mouth and tease her sister-in-law. Big brother really dotes on you, doesn't he? Ha ha! Hearing that, a blush crept onto Zhou Yao's face. She gave a shy smile and didn't say anything back. You really have changed so much. As long as you're home, you won't let her touch any chores at all. Even the hot water for her to wipe herself down at night, you boil and bring it to the room for her. These past few days, she's really felt like she's being carefully cherished. It's almost too good, to the point where it feels a bit unreal. She's even a little on edge. Zhou Yao is terrified that this is just a passing phase, and that you'll turn back into who you were before. Every day is a struggle, living in constant anxiety and fear of losing this. Her nerves are kept in a state of high tension every single day. She greedily hopes that this good life can last a little longer. That's why she is extra careful in everything she says and does. I was so afraid of upsetting you. While we were eating, I watched him hand the white flour-steamed bun to me, while he just started chomping down on the coarse-grained bun himself. It was obviously him who complained that the coarse-grained buns tasted bad, and it was him who insisted I make the white flour ones. Yet now that they're made, he won't even take a single bite, saving every last one for me. Honestly, I'm fine with eating anything, as long as he can just settle down and live a normal life, and stop running around like a hoodlum. I'd be more than satisfied. To this day, Zhou Yao still hasn't figured it out. Why did you suddenly change into such a good person? It's not like he hadn't done stuff like this before after getting drunk. He'd wake up with a hangover, hug me and apologize, even kneeling on the floor and swearing on his life. And every time after one of his drunken rampages, he would indeed behave for a bit. But that would only last for 2 or 3 days. Then he'd revert to his old self and go right back to his reckless ways. I've never seen him act like he has these past few days. Cooking meals, boiling water, and even doting on the kids. He even bought the children new clothes and shoes, everything they needed. Zhou Yao kept her head clear like a mirror reflecting the truth. She constantly reminded herself to stay vigilant and not get swept away by this sweet illusion. What if she wakes up from this dream later, and things aren't the same as they are now? What would she do then? But you had no idea about all the twisted worries turning inside your wife's heart. As the sky started to turn dark, you finally finished cleaning out the west room. That room was just an old mud brick shack used for storage and left empty for ages. The old newspapers on the walls were as ragged as spider webs, crumbling to dust at the slightest touch. Even though you'd cleaned it up, it was still filled with dust. You worked quickly and skillfully to put together a small bed out of wooden boards, officially finishing the task your wife had given you. Seeing you walk out drenched in sweat, Zhou Yao quickly grabbed a towel and handed it to you. Hurry up and wipe yourself off, dinner's almost ready. You didn't take the towel with your hand. Instead, your tall, lean frame stooped down slightly, and you brought your face, rugged and handsome, right up close to your wife's, your warm breath washing over her as you said, "Honey, are you going to wipe it for me?" Hearing what you said, Zhou Yao subconsciously took a glance at Li Tiantian, who was carrying things into the house. After he went inside, she stood on her tiptoes and reached up to wipe the sweat off your forehead. She didn't forget to remind you that there was a guest in the house. She told you that in the future, when you get up in the morning to use the bathroom, stop walking around shirtless in just your boxers. It might make the young girl shy if she sees you. His eyes were dark bright and full of life, staring at my wife so close I could almost touch her. Seeing how carefully she was wiping everything down, and listening to her fuss over all these little details, I felt a warm fuzzy glow inside. Even though it felt a bit awkward not being able to walk around shirtless in my own home. Seeing her so serious and dedicated, I couldn't help but curl my lips into a smile. I leaned in and gave her rosy lips a quick, light peck. All right, whatever you say," I agreed readily. Zhou Yao was caught off guard by this sudden intimate gesture and blushed down to her ears. It would be one thing if it were just the two of us at home, but with an unmarried young woman staying with us now, he's just being completely shameless. Flushing deeply, Zhou Yao snapped at me, "Stop dragging your feet. Go wash your hands and let's eat." She turned around and hurried toward the kitchen. Watching her scramble away in a fluster, I couldn't help but grin. A look of pure contentment beamed across my handsome face. You walk over to the side of the well. You draw up a bucket of cold water. Splash, splash, you wash your face, feeling the water drip down. You're drenched in sweat. That sticky, gross feeling is driving you crazy. You look around. You're the only one in the courtyard. You peel off your undershirt and dump that whole bucket of cold water right over your head. Man, that feels good. But then, of course, Li Tiantian happens to walk out of the house, and she catches the whole thing. Watching the man with his bare back turn to her, his muscular frame fully exposed. His muscles were well proportioned, with sharp defined lines. There were even a few scratch marks on his skin. Li Tiantian felt her cheeks burning hot, and in her embarrassment she turned around and ducked back inside. This dirt-walled shack was just too much. It was dark, dingy, and covered in dust everywhere. Li Tiantian couldn't stand the thought of living here for even one more day. Hearing the splashing of water, Zhou Yao walked out carrying the dishes. She caught sight of you standing there shirtless, your body dripping wet as if you'd just been fished out of a pond. A sudden flare of irritation welled up in her heart. She slammed the dishes onto the stone table in the courtyard, grabbed your arm and started dragging you toward the house. As she pulled, she kept scolding you, complaining that in such cold weather, what would you do if you caught a cold? You let your wife lead you into the room, and as you listened to her nagging, a warm, fuzzy feeling spread through your chest. You knew she was genuinely, sincerely worried about you. Once inside the inner room, Zhou Yao picked up a small blanket that the child used, stood on her tiptoes, and carefully wiped the water from your hair. She was so focused that she didn't even blink, still grumbling at you to lower your head, hurry up. She didn't notice at all that you were staring at her with such a goofy, love-struck grin. When you heard your wife's command, you quickly spread your long legs, obediently lowering your head to let her dry you off. Wife, why don't you try on those new clothes tomorrow? I really want to see you in them. As soon as you said that, Zhou Yao's hand paused for a second, but she didn't say a word. Once she felt your hair was dry enough, she moved behind you, wiping the water from your back inch by inch. Seeing those marks on your back, her face grew even hotter. It wasn't like this before. Thinking about all this, Zhou Yao's heart started pounding uncontrollably. She tossed the little blanket into your arms. Clean up that mess yourself. Once you're cleaned up, put on some fresh pants and come out to eat. Zhou Yao brushed aside the curtain and stepped out. Zhengzhuangzhen. As Zhou Yao came out of the west room, the two of them shared a knowing smile. Neither said a word, but they understood each other perfectly. The place was just 3 small mud brick rooms, barely big enough to turn around in. Whatever was said in the east room could be heard crystal clear in the west. Li Tiantian felt awkward not knowing whether to sit or stand. She felt completely out of place and uneasy. If this were at night, wouldn't she be trapped right there with them? You, having changed into a different pair of pants, walked out with a gray shirt on. You strode out looking like you were ready to take on the world. You sat down on the stone stool next to your wife. You glanced over at the stone table. The scrambled eggs from this morning were barely touched. Not a single piece of the 8 pieces of meat was missing. You frowned, seeing that your wife hadn't eaten anything all morning. Zhou Yao had just picked up her chopsticks. When she looked up and saw your dark face and furrowed brow, her heart skipped a beat. Her hand trembled and her chopsticks clattered to the ground. She felt completely crushed in that instant. He had shown his true colors so quickly. She had actually hoped he could keep up the act a little longer this time. The dream had ended far too soon. She put down the other chopstick and avoided your gaze. Taking a deep breath, she ate half a steamed bun and 2 bites of egg. Her voice sounded calm, but her hand was gripping her worn-out shirt so tightly. Her whole body was shaking. The sound of the chopsticks hitting the floor jolted you back to reality. You realized something was wrong. Looking closer, you saw Zhou Yao's eyes were red and swollen. They looked damp and pitiful, like a little heart drenched in rain. Your heart tightened and you panicked. You were just worried because you hated seeing him not eat enough. You never imagined your tone had been so harsh that it scared him. You reached out to hug him, but he flinched and pulled away. That made you panic even more. At over 6 feet tall, you crouched down right in front of your wife. Your face was full of alarm. Wife, I was just a little anxious, that's all. I truly didn't expect that my shouting would make you feel so wronged. Zhou Yao couldn't hold back her tears any longer. They just kept falling plop plop onto the floor. She was genuinely terrified just now. She thought you had turned back into that hot-tempered demon, the kind of monster who would lose control and hit her. Your heart ached for her so much. You scooped her up into your arms and hurried into the east room. Li Tiantian, who had just sat down on the stone bench, looked completely dazed. What on earth just happened? Now she was left all alone in the courtyard. Inside the room, you looked at the woman in your arms with such heartache. Her eyes were red from crying. Her delicate nose was flushed too. It felt like a knife was twisting in your heart, so you lowered your head and kissed her eyelids gently. You whispered softly, "Wife, I'm so sorry. I was truly wrong. I was just so worried that you wouldn't eat enough. And in my panic, I snapped at you. I'm out busy all day long, and I can't keep an eye on your meals every second. I was just impatient, and my tone got too harsh." Zhou Yao felt a little better inside. She also realized she had been a bit too sensitive just now. Lately, being so pampered and protected by you, she had become a bit spoiled. Now that everything was out in the open, she felt even more embarrassed. Her fair fingers tightly clutched the fabric of your shirt. With her eyes lowered, she bit her lower lip, unable to say a word. Right then, out of the blue, you said, "Wife, what's the matter? Is our daughter getting enough to eat lately?" Zhou Yao's fair, tender face instantly flushed bright red, looking just like a ripe persimmon. She tried to pull herself out of your embrace. Turning her back to you, she said, "Get out of here for a second." Her voice trembled. She'd been drinking crucian carp soup every single day lately. She wasn't sure if it was actually helping, but for the last 2 days the baby had been nursing and hadn't needed any formula. Even so, her breasts were still incredibly full, and they were aching with engorgement during the day. Zhou Yao had just stepped out of the room when she realized this shameless man was staring right at her. She was instantly mortified. "What are you doing?" Zhou Yao sat on a stone bench outside, resting her chin on one hand. It was already pitch black out and the stars and moon had come out to play, yet that couple still hadn't emerged. She didn't dare to just barge in and check, so she had no choice but to wait. A long while passed. Finally, the two of them came out of the room. Zhou Yao noticed the corners of her young sister-in-law's eyes were still moist. Her cheeks were flushed bright red, and her lips looked vibrant and tender. I guess they finally made up, she thought. Seeing Li Tiantian staring back at her, Zhou Yu remembered what happened just moments ago, and her face burned with embarrassment. She sat down, picked up a pair of chopsticks, and handed them to Li Tiantian. "Let's eat." She then handed another pair to the man beside her. After he sat down, he didn't even spare Li Tiantian a single glance. He took a steamed bun made of fine flour and placed it in his wife's hand, while he grabbed a coarse grain bun for himself and took a big bite. He was mentally planning to head over to the reservoir when he got a chance, to catch some crucian carp to help his wife regain her strength. Zhou Yao had no idea what was going on in the man's head, but she was worried Li Tiantian might feel uncomfortable, so she passed her a fine flour bun. "Eat up, don't be shy. Just treat this place like your own home." Li Tiantian took a small bite, wondering to herself, is this family actually poor or rich? If they were poor, why were they eating fine flour buns? The side dishes were scrambled eggs and meat. Even in this day and age, that wasn't a shabby meal at all. Yesterday morning, she'd seen the village chief's family eating nothing but black cornmeal buns and pickled radishes. But if they were rich, why were they living in a 3-room mud brick house? Apart from the TV they'd bought today, there wasn't a single decent piece of furniture. Even the bed she was sleeping on was just a few wooden planks haphazardly thrown together. He's so worried that if he rolls over in his sleep, the bed might just collapse underneath him. Oh, right. I heard him talking to the tractor driver earlier today about building a new house. Doesn't that mean this old place is gonna get torn down? Where is he even gonna live once that happens? Then why does he even bother keeping himself around? It's easy to see. This guy, he only has eyes for his wife. There's no room for anyone else in his heart. It's clear he hates living here. While I was lost in thought, a baby started crying from inside the room. Without a second thought, you stood up and told Zhou Yao to keep eating, then strode into the room. You flipped the lights on and scooped your daughter up from the little bed. Zhou Yao put down her chopsticks, reaching out to take the baby, but you dodged her. "You eat first." "I'm not hungry yet. I'll eat in a bit." Zhou Yao knew better, of course. She knew he was just saying he wasn't hungry so she would eat first. He'd been out all day and then spent the whole time clearing out junk. How could he not be starving? But she didn't call him out on it. She just picked up her chopsticks and kept eating. Li Tiantian kept her eyes lowered, nibbling on a steamed bun. Out of the corner of her eye, she was secretly observing how the couple interacted, and couldn't help but compare it to her own family. When her own brothers came home from work, they barely even looked at their kids. If the babies cried, it was always the wives who had to handle it. They'd be stuck holding a baby in one arm trying to eat with the other, struggling the whole time. But this man right here, he was pacing back and forth in the courtyard holding the baby, soothing her. It was almost unbelievable. Zhou Yao finished her meal quickly, took the baby from her husband's arms and went back inside. As soon as he was left alone, Li Tiantian snuck a glance, looking at the young man sitting across from her. He was devouring his bun and egg, his handsome face completely expressionless. He radiated nothing but cold detachment. It was like looking at a completely different person compared to when he was with his wife. Li Tiantian found it honestly kind of creepy. She felt so restless and awkward that she stammered out, Big brother, I'm full." He cleared the bowls and chopsticks, carrying them into the kitchen. After washing them up quickly, he retreated to the west room and didn't dare to come out again. The sky had gone completely dark. You sat alone in the courtyard. You finished off the remaining 4 coarse grain buns. Only after drinking the noodle soup did you finally feel satisfied. Afterward, you boiled a pot of hot water, took a basin, and headed back to your room. "Wife, make sure you wipe yourself down and use the restroom," you said. You placed the basin on the stand and walked out. Zhou Yao closed the door. She took off her clothes and bathed with the hot water. Just as she finished and put her clothes back on, she vaguely heard a sound behind the house. She thought she might have heard it wrong. The next second, a man's voice drifted in from outside. "Hey, pretty lady! Are you taking a bath in there?" Zhou Yao's hair stood on end. She let out a sharp scream. Outside, you had just pulled up your belt, and upon hearing her scream, you rushed out immediately. You caught her as she threw herself into your arms. Holding her tightly, you looked down and asked, "What's wrong?" Zhou Yao wrapped her arms tightly around your waist, her body trembling uncontrollably. Someone was just out there. You narrowed your dark eyes and looked toward the courtyard wall. Sure enough, you saw a head scurrying away in the distance. In an instant, your deep eyes were filled with murderous rage. You turned your gaze back, looking at her in your arms, dressed only in her undergarments. You scooped her up, carried her to the bed, and tucked her in. You walked out of the bedroom and instructed Li Tiantian, who was standing at the door of the west room, "Keep an eye on her for me. I'm going out for a moment." You didn't say another word. With long, purposeful strides, you walked out of the courtyard. Your tall, imposing figure vanished into the dark of the night. At the home of Erlizy on the east side of the village, the neighbors listened to Erlizy's miserable wailing screams, along with the thud of fists hitting flesh. Their hearts pounded with fear as they listened. They all knew you were not a man to be trifled with. Deep down, you were a ruthless man. I'm not sure how exactly that low-life Erlizy managed to provoke you. Just listening to the commotion, you clearly didn't hold back. I was seriously worried you'd beat him to death. Fourth brother, I was wrong. I was just going to visit Li Tian, the educated youth. I really didn't see anything. You heard Erlizy begging for mercy, yet you just dislocated his jaw right then and there. What kind of nonsense are you spouting? Didn't you say you were craving meat and went to go get some? Fourth brother, I'm sorry I was wrong. Erlizy couldn't even summon the strength to crawl up and kneel anymore. I was genuinely terrified you'd kill him. For a split second, you really felt like finishing him off for good. But then you thought of Zhou Yao and your daughter, and you softened your blows. Zhou Yao was lying in bed. She didn't know how much time had passed until she heard the sound of water splashing out in the courtyard. That's how she knew you were back. You were washing off with cold water. About 10 or 15 minutes later, she heard the sound of the door opening and closing. In the darkness, you assumed she was already asleep. You tiptoed into the room, and just as you were about to feel your way onto the bed, a voice came from those blankets. "You're back." Zhou Yu reached out and clicked the light on. The room lit up. You paused in your tracks, seeing her propped up on one elbow, her dark, silky hair spilling over her pale shoulders and neck. Your gaze darkened as you looked at her. You stepped up onto the bed and reached out to click the light off again. In the dark, you wrapped your arms around her slender-toned waist and patted her back gently. "It's okay now, wifey. Just get some sleep." Before you had returned, she hadn't dared to close her eyes. She was terrified you'd lose control and beat that man to death, and she was worried about what the villagers would say behind your back. She had been scared out of her wits. Now she curled up in your arms like a little kitten, her cheek pressed against your firm, burning chest. Listening to your steady, powerful heartbeat, she slowly stopped trembling. She didn't even dare to cry out loud, afraid of waking his daughter. Looking at his wife like this, he felt like he hadn't hit that guy hard enough. He'd assumed that given his bad reputation, the local hoodlums wouldn't dare mess with his family. Turns out some people were still bold enough to try something shady. But after today, anyone who had those thoughts should finally pipe down. Seeing the exhaustion on her husband's face, she thought about how he'd been leaving before dawn and returning after dark lately, digging for decorative stones to sell, handing all the money over to her, protecting her and doting on her. He really had changed. In the darkness, Zhou Yao had cried until she was exhausted and drifted off into a hazy sleep. Hearing his steady rhythmic breathing beside her, she finally let out a sigh of relief. The next day, Zhou Yao was woken up by voices outside the house. Out in the courtyard, sister-in-law Zhao had stirred a generous spoonful of white sugar into the boiled water, pouring drinks for all the men working. Sugar was a luxury item in these times. Most families wouldn't dream of buying it for everyday use. Cao Fengji finished a bowl of the sugar water, leaned in towards sister-in-law Zhao, and whispered, "Hey, did I hear your sister-in-law shouting in the house yesterday?" Sister-in-law Zhao put down the kettle and glared at the gossip-hungry Cao Fengji. "Your place is over a mile away from Little Fourth's house. You heard that. What at night? You got nothing better to do than squat under a young couple's window and eavesdrop?" Cao Fengji just chuckled, ignoring the jab, and continued, "I heard that last night. You beat second-rate Lai from the east side, within an inch of his life. Broke his leg, too. Seeing as your city girl wife has been causing such a ruckus, I reckon she must have been cheating on you behind your back. He just couldn't hold it in. He was itching to gossip with someone. Sister-in-law Zhao couldn't be bothered with him. She picked up the kettle and started pouring water for the others. When she got to you, she gave you a subtle nod. She whispered, 'Go check on Zhou Yao. He's usually up by this time. I hope he's not coming down with something. You were in the middle of hauling bricks, but you stopped what you were doing. When you got up this morning, he was indeed still asleep. And now it's already 10 o'clock. You pulled back the curtain and stepped into the bedroom. Zhou Yao woke up the moment you opened the door. Instinctively, you pulled him into your arms. Turning your head, you spoke to the person in your embrace. 'Since you're awake, go ahead and get dressed. I'll bring your breakfast in for you in a bit.' Your voice was a little raspy. The curtains were still drawn. It was getting really noisy outside. Zhou Yao couldn't help but ask what all that commotion was in the courtyard. 'We're repairing the courtyard wall. It's a total mess out there. Honey, you'd better stay inside for now. There's still a lot to do.' 'Then why don't you let me go?' 'Just a little longer.' You smiled as you replied, your grip firm but gentle. Instead of letting go, you hugged him tighter and said to him, 'Give me a kiss and I'll let you go.' 'Stop acting up. Let go already, there are people outside.' 'How am I acting up? You're my wife. I'm just asking for a kiss and you won't even give me that. Do you not like me anymore?' You said it with a hint of aggrieved stubbornness. Zhou Yao meant to explain himself, but in the end he didn't say anything. He leaned in and gave you a light peck on the cheek. 'All right, let me go now.' Having been kissed by him, your beautiful eyes lit up. Happily, you cupped his little face and kissed him back. 'Honey, I really love you.' 'Seriously, let go. There are actually people out there. I'm just bored stiff sitting around in this room. I want to head out and help out.' You shot that down without a second thought, telling her not to talk nonsense. 'I'll have your sister-in-law come in later. She can keep you company and chat for a bit.' Zhu Yu realized there was no hope of going out to help. Seeing that you wouldn't let her step foot out the door, she went back to the bedroom bored to play with your daughter. Because there were so many people helping out, the courtyard wall was finished by around 4 o'clock that same afternoon. The 2-meter-high wall was topped with shards of broken glass. Without a ladder for the average person, trying to climb over a 2-meter wall is pretty damn tough. And that's not even counting the glass shards on top. Starting with the wall before the house, that's definitely a first for around here. Behind your house, Cao Fengji's brother gave a little smirk. Last night when I came out to use the outhouse, I saw it. That 2-bit Langzi sneaking out of Zhou Yao's room. I'm telling you, they've definitely already crossed that line. You're kidding, is that actually true? Zhou Yao is moving way too fast. Zhang Hongxia gasped the two of them, whispering back and forth, winking and nudging each other. The way they were looking at Zhou Yao was just plain trashy. You caught the whole scene, having kept an eye on them the entire time. Every single word they said was burned into your memory. Those two women are really begging for a beating. My own aunts. To think these two daughters-in-law turned out to be such lowlifes, claiming they came to help out. They clearly just came here to mooch off our sugar water. Did you see that? Cao Fengji even brought a tea mug with her, and her pants pockets were bulging too. Looks like she pocketed plenty of the snacks meant for the people actually working. You started plotting how to deal with them. Cao Fengji and Zhang Hongxia, I need to handle them once and for all. Save myself the future headaches. After dinner, you wandered over to your uncle Wang Dashan's place. Wang Dashan and his two sons were all still living under the same roof, not yet separated. Since we all live in the same place, you walked right into the Wang family home while they were having dinner. Everyone was completely taken aback when they saw you walk in. Zhao-kun, have you eaten yet? Lu Shukin glanced at you shoveling a mouthful of rice into her mouth. She didn't think much of it when she saw you heading straight toward her. You marched right up to Cao Fengji's side, and then you grabbed her by the hair. Your sudden move stunned everyone in the room. As Cao Fengji let out a sharp cry of pain, everyone finally snapped out of it and realized whose side Wang Heiteng was on. Get up, Zhao-kun. Have you lost your mind? You let out a cold, sharp laugh. Lost my mind, why don't you ask your wife about that? Cao Fengji never expected the news to reach your ears so fast. She certainly didn't think you'd show up here this quickly. You began listing off all of Cao Fengji's wrongdoings. Lu Shukin and Wang Dashan's faces turned black as they listened. This wasn't just a daughter-in-law they'd brought home, she was a walking disaster. They had always been worried that their son would pick up bad habits from someone like Zhao-kun. They had warned him time and time again to stay away from her. And yet this woman had the nerve to go around spreading lies. Cao Fengji cursed you under her breath, calling you trash, but she couldn't find the words to explain herself. Zhang Hongxia stood up. Isn't there some kind of misunderstanding here? Zhao-kun let her go first? After all, Cao Fengji is your cousin-in-law. Zhang Hongxia, you're no saint yourself. Sit down and shut up. You two are cut from the same cloth. Zhang Hongxia looked embarrassed. She glanced at her husband Wang Yong, but he remained silent, clearly not wanting to get dragged into this mess. You raised your hand and slapped Cao Fengji right across the face. I'll teach you to run your mouth. I'm gonna slap that filth right off your face. Cao Fengji was completely dazed by the hit. She never imagined you would actually dare to lay a hand on her. Not a single person in the Wang family moved to stop you. You slapped her face 6 times in total, before finally letting her go. I'll smack that filthy mouth of yours shut. Cao Fengji was completely blindsided by the strike. He never imagined the guy would actually dare to hit him. Even the Wang family elders just stood there. Nobody stepped in to stop it. You let Cao Fengji have it, landing 6 sharp slaps across his face. Only then did you finally let him go. Cao Fengji saw stars dancing before her eyes. She couldn't even stand steady. She stumbled and collapsed onto Wang He, only to be shoved away violently by her own husband. Wang Dashan chimed in, you were just asking for a beating. You had it coming, Cao Fengji. What's wrong with your brain? Can't stand to see Zhao-kun and his wife doing well. How could you even dare to spout such nonsense? You're clearly just trying to stir up trouble. I didn't say those things. But even after getting hit, nobody felt a shred of pity for her. With nowhere left to turn, she could only dig her heels in and deny everything. You didn't say it. Do you dare to swear on it? Cao Fengji was far too naive. She was no match for a cunning old fox like you. If you're lying, may your whole family drop dead. May your parents die a miserable death. And your children, may they all meet a wretched end too. Those 2 lines completely silenced Cao Fengji. She was panicking now. She stuttered, unable to get another word out. Listen up. Everyone here sees exactly what's going on. You scanned the crowd, locking eyes with everyone. I'm putting this out there today. If I catch anyone spreading rumors in this village, trying to drive a wedge between my wife and me, don't blame me for being heartless. If I beat you to a pulp, I'm not taking responsibility for a thing. As soon as you finished, you delivered 2 more vicious kicks to Cao Fengji. Wang He looked on. He stepped forward and rained down another series of punches and kicks on his own wife. Cao Fengji's face was swollen beyond recognition. She begged for mercy repeatedly as Wang He pounded on her. Still not a single person dared to step in and break up the fight. You hadn't left and it was clear you were still fuming. Anyone who intervened would just be asking for trouble. After a long moment, Lu Shukin sighed. That's enough, let it be. If she gets too badly hurt, you'll just end up paying for her medical bills. Wang He's hand hung in the air, before landing one final stinging slap across Cao Fengji's face. That blow was so hard it split his lip and drew blood. That's for running your mouth. If you run it again next time, I'm sewing your lips shut. You let out a cold snort. After dropping that line, you strutted away without looking back. Inside the room, besides the sound of Cao Fengji sobbing, there wasn't another peep. You felt physically and mentally refreshed after putting Cao Fengjie in his place. You headed home cheerful and ready to see your wife. Seeing that he had left, Wang Deshan shot a look at Liu Shukin. He signaled for her to take the two daughters-in-law to the kitchen to clean up. In the center of the main room, Wang Deshan puffed on his pipe in silence, then tapped his pipe bowl against the table. The two brothers Wang and Wang Yong kept their heads down, afraid to make a sound. Wang and Wang Yong, you two better keep your wives in check. If I hear any gossip in the village about Little Four's family, even I won't be able to protect you. You guys can't afford to mess with Little Four. I hear he's turned over a new leaf lately, but from what I see, don't come crying to me when you end up regretting it. With a loud creak, the old wooden door was pushed open. Cao Fengjie quickly squeezed her eyes shut. She hadn't even figured out what to do yet. They had been married for a few months, yet there was still no sign of a baby. Her father-in-law, mother-in-law, and even her husband, none of them lifted a finger to help when she was getting beaten earlier. What kind of people are these? Wang He walked in without a word, sitting on the edge of the heated brick bed, lost in thought. His mind was a chaotic mess. He couldn't find any peace. This cousin of his was no pushover. His dad made it clear don't provoke him. But his own wife was so beautiful, he just couldn't bring himself to let her go or send her back to her parents. Their eyes met, but neither said a word. After a while, Cao Fengjie pulled herself up. I was wrong. Wang He was a bit taken aback. He never expected there would come a day when he'd actually admit he was wrong. Seeing that he wasn't saying anything, Cao Fengjie continued. From now on, I'll behave myself and live a quiet life with you. I promise I won't even step a foot outside the house. Wang He stared at him for a few moments. Then he turned around and walked away. Cao Fengjie watched his back as he left. He felt a bit lost should he just take the initiative himself. There is no way I'm taking that beating for nothing. Early one morning, Zhou Yao divided the proofed dough into 5 small pieces. He placed them in the pan and pan-fried them until both sides were golden brown. Just as he was about to pinch off a small piece to taste it, he was startled by a pair of arms wrapping around him from behind. The man was very tall. He had to hunch over just to pull him entirely into his embrace. He rested his chin against the crook of his neck. Zhou Yao shivered slightly, but he relaxed the moment he caught that familiar scent. Still half asleep, he turned his head around. He noticed the man staring intently at the food in his hand. He gave a gentle smile. He fed a piece of the flatbread into his mouth, asking, "How does it taste?" "Delicious." "Wife, you really don't have to get up so early just to cook for me. You should stay in bed and get some more sleep while taking care of the kids." Seeing the man's genuine and natural smile, Zhou Yao felt touched. "I just want to do something for you. Are you heading out to hunt?" "It's cold in the mountains. It's better to have something hot in your stomach in the morning." "A few days ago, I saw you leaving with nothing but some dry rations for breakfast." "I'm heading out now." "Did you finish your breakfast?" He laced up his heavy boots. Then he shouldered his basket and started heading up the mountain. After walking for nearly 2 hours, he successfully located the Dendrobium orchid plant. He pulled out his tools and got to work. By the time noon arrived, the entire batch of orchids had been harvested. Seeing that it was still early, he didn't head down the mountain immediately. He wandered around looking for some deadwood, hoping to get lucky. And sure enough, he found a massive haul. You stride forward, taking big, confident steps. Are those mushrooms? Wait, no, who's ever seen a mushroom that vibrant red and shriveled up? That's shaped like the number 4. It's a bunch of Ganoderma mushrooms, all different sizes. This trip up the mountain was definitely worth it. How come I never realized this deep forest was just overflowing with treasures? You set down your bamboo basket. You snap off some leafy grass and line the bottom with it. With a sharp blade, you carefully cut the Ganoderma and place them inside. You cover the top with another thick layer of grass. Just as you're about to head out of the corner of your eye, a slight movement. You catch a glimpse of a small, inconspicuous hole nearby. There are loose bits of dirt and animal tracks scattered all around the entrance. Those are the telltale signs of a badger. Looks like a badger den. Badger meat is delicious. It'll be perfect to help my wife build up her strength. And the badger's bile is a rare and valuable medicinal herb. But badgers are notoriously cunning and sly. Trying to catch one directly is going to be far from easy. You decide to try your luck with the smokeout method. You rummage through your storage space and find a small handful of dried chili peppers. You carefully shove the dried peppers and some dry firewood into the entrance of the hole. The flames start to flicker and dance. Thick billowing smoke rises up. Carrying a pungent, stinging scent, it starts to fill the badger den. You step back to the side and wait patiently. Once the badger senses the smoke and the strange smell, its instincts will drive it to search for an exit to escape. And you've already set up a trap net at the main entrance, just waiting for the little guy to run right into it. Honestly, it's a bit of a gamble. Badgers are expert tunnelers. Their dens are incredibly intricate. They usually have multiple escape routes. You remember watching a documentary once that mentioned some badger dens can have over 130 exits. Time ticks by agonizing second. The forest is deathly silent. Only the occasional chirp of a bird breaks the stillness. You keep your eyes locked on the hole. Your palms are starting to sweat. You waited for nearly half an hour, but nothing happened. You were just about to give up. You were getting ready to use some damp branches to put out the fire. Suddenly, there's some movement at the cave entrance. A furry badger-like head peeks out. Its eyes are darting around, terrified by the smoke. It scrambles out of the hole completely, and in a total panic, it charges right into your trap. You're quick on your feet. You yank the net rope, trapping the creature firmly inside. Looking at it, the thing has to be at least 20 pounds. To actually land one with only a 1 in 6 chance, you are beyond satisfied. After grabbing water from your secret stash to make sure the fire is dead, you finally turn around and head down the mountain. Meanwhile, back home, word has gotten out among the villagers that you bought a TV. Curious, they start dropping by one after another. Everyone wants to see what this television the city folks talk about actually looks like. Your place is absolutely packed all day long. People keep coming and going in waves. While they're there, some of the villagers see Zhao Zhenxing dropping off a huge pile of construction materials. When they find out you're actually planning to build a house, they all look completely shocked. There's gossip everywhere. They're all convinced you'll never be able to finish it. They figured you couldn't possibly have that much money. They were even bad-mouthing you behind your back, saying you don't know how to manage a household. They said blowing all that cash on a metal box was completely useless. Just a total waste of money and electricity, they claimed. Zhou Yao was exhausted from playing hostess to all the villagers who came over to watch TV. She was absolutely worn out. It felt like the house was even livelier today than it was on their wedding day. Just as she was about to sit down for a breather, she saw you coming back carrying your basket. Her eyes lit up instantly. She held the baby close and walked over to meet you. As she spoke, she noticed your bamboo basket was stuffed with grass and leaves. After seeing this a few times now, just by looking at the grass in your basket, she could already guess there was something good hidden inside. She couldn't help but wonder how on earth you got so lucky. Wild dendrobium is one of those things you just can't go out and find whenever you want. Yet every single time you head up the mountain, you come back with some. Zhou Yao was wearing a brand new red sweater, which made her skin look even more delicate and fair. For a second, you were completely dazzled. Once she got close to you, you leaned in, wanting to plant a soft kiss on her cheek. She blushed and dodged away. Zhou Yao thought you had no sense of propriety, trying to kiss her in broad daylight just whenever you felt like it. Tian and your sister-in-law were both right there. Only then did you notice the few villagers in the room. You looked at your wife confused. Seeing your look of uncertainty, Zhou Yao explained, the villagers all wanted to see what the television looked like. Thankfully, your sister-in-law had come over to help hold down the fort. You nodded, wanting to take the baby from her arms. But noticing your own clothes were a bit dirty, you carried the basket into the kitchen instead. You followed your wife in, leaned down to her ear and whispered a few instructions. Zhou Yao glanced at the basket and nodded, letting you know she understood. Even though she didn't know exactly how much you'd brought back, the fact that you were heading into town first thing tomorrow morning was clear. She didn't press for more details. With so many outsiders still in the house, she couldn't believe you were brave enough to get so close to her. This guy who's right under my nose has really changed so much lately. Noticing his wife sneaking glances at him, he just grins ear to ear, looking completely tickled pink. He leans in and plants a kiss on each of her tiny palm-sized cheeks. No one even said anything like that. His hands start wandering too, messing around at her waist, asking how she can wash up like this. I bet her waist isn't even 16 inches around. Honey, even when I'm not home to keep an eye on you, you still need to eat properly. You're way too skinny. I can practically wrap my hands all the way around your waist. Zhou Yao holding the baby gives you a playful glare. Just as she's about to scold you for acting out in front of everyone, she hears her sister-in-law calling out from outside. Since your husband is back now, I should probably head home, Yao. Old Zhao will be coming back from the field soon. As she says this, she starts heading toward the door. Zhou Yao quickly calls out to her, "Sister-in-law, wait a second, let me give you some sugar for your daughter." She hurries out of the kitchen and into the east room, grabs a bag of rock sugar, and stuffs it into her sister-in-law's hand. She's worried you might speak up and stop her from giving it away. Rock sugar is a rare treat around here, and she usually hates to part with it. But if her sister-in-law hadn't been looking out for them, life would have been even tougher for her and her daughter. Her sister-in-law heard that a bunch of villagers were coming over to snoop around, so she didn't even bother with her needlework today. If it weren't for the fact that sister-in-law brought so many people over, I wouldn't have been able to handle everything on my own. Back when we were poor, we always relied on her and took advantage of her kindness. Now that we're better off, I really want to pay her back. Even if we're relatives, we can't keep taking from her like that. Sister-in-law Zhao Kun bought this. Take it home for the kids to have. No, I can't. Just keep it for Niu. Sister-in-law, please just take it. Sister-in-law stared at the half-pound of rock sugar in her hand, completely stunned. She quickly tried to push it back. Rock sugar water is something you serve to honored guests. How could an ordinary family afford something like this? If a new bride could bring something like this back to her parents' home, it would be such a huge honor for her family. The two of them went back and forth, passing it around. It looked like the bag was about to rip, only then feeling sheepish. Did sister-in-law accept the sugar and head home? Zhou Yao was worried that by acting on her own, she had upset her husband. She scuffed her foot, stammering as she tried to explain to Zhao Kun. Thanks to sister-in-law coming over to help, there were just too many people. I was so busy I didn't know which way was up. I almost forgot to even eat. I gave the sugar to her. Please don't be mad. And please, whatever you do, don't be foolish enough to go ask for it back. Looking at his wife's trembling, nervous little expression, you felt like a hand was squeezing your heart tight. It was absolutely heartbreaking. His wife still didn't trust him. She was terrified that if she said one wrong word, he would beat or scold her. He really had brought this on himself. He was reaping what he'd sown. Not saying anything only made Zhou Yao even more terrified. She hung her head as if she had done something wrong. Zhao Kun, I won't ever do it again. Please don't be angry anymore. You pulled your daughter close with one arm and wrapped your other arm around your wife, pulling her into your embrace. There were some things you really needed to make clear to her. Misunderstandings are the kind of thing you can never let drag on overnight. Otherwise, they just pile up more and more. The biggest mistake in a marriage is failing to communicate properly. If you don't communicate, it's all over. You pat your wife on the back, resting your chin against her hair, and in the gentlest tone you say to her, "In this house, you're the one in charge. You handle all the money. Buy whatever your heart desires. Whatever you decide, I'll back you up 100%. It wasn't just you being stubborn, but at first, hearing those words, Zhou Yao actually thought you were just acting out of spite. But you kept saying it over and over again, with such sincerity. That's when it finally hit home for Zhou Yao. Heaven knows she hadn't even dared to breathe properly just a moment ago. I was terrified he might flip out on me. Seeing my wife's breathing slowly steady out, I finally felt a wave of relief wash over me. It looks like I need to make a habit of having heart-to-hearts with her every night. I really want to take her into town to clear her head, but I know she wouldn't be down for that at all. She's afraid that once we step into the city, I might just turn around and sell our daughter. Still, I felt like taking her out for a breather right now was the best move. Hey honey, want to go for a stroll down to the foot of the mountain? I'll bag a quail for us to have a little treat. Zhou Yao felt a bit tempted. It wasn't because she was just craving some quail. It's just that lately this guy hasn't been letting her go out to the fields to earn work points anymore. He just wants her to stay home, recover, and take care of the baby. She had gone back to work in the fields the very next day after giving birth. Back then, he didn't care about her well-being at all, but now suddenly he's acting all concerned. She had no idea what kind of favor he'd pulled with Wang Xuanzhu, but even though none of the able-bodied people in the house were working, Wang Xuanzhu didn't even come by to pressure them. Seeing that his wife was clearly interested, but still hesitant, her eyes darting toward the people in the courtyard, he knew she was worried that if they left, the stuff in the house wouldn't be safe. He let out a laugh. Don't worry, just wait a second. After saying that he carried the baby out of the kitchen. She had no clue what he said to those people, but everyone in the main room cleared out. He even chased Li Tiantian out too. Li Tiantian actually really wanted to tag along with this little family of 3 to check out the foot of the mountain. She heard there were tigers on that mountain, so none of the educated youth dared to get near it. But seeing that they didn't exactly welcome her company, she had no choice but to wander aimlessly around the village. On the way, he noticed his wife glancing at him, looking like she wanted to say something but held back. He stopped in his tracks, looking at her with an expectant face. Zhou Yao gathered all her courage and said, "Zhao-kun, can I go back to my parents' place tomorrow?" "Is that all? Sure, I'll go back with you tomorrow." After being married for so long, the man by her side finally started acting like a real human being. He finally knew how to earn money to support the household and take care of his wife and daughter. Zhou Yao wanted to pay a visit to her parents' home to put her mother's mind at ease, so she wouldn't have to worry about her daughter's unhappy marriage anymore. He had thought his wife had spent so long building up her courage, wondering what big deal she had to talk about, only for it to be this. He held their daughter with one arm and held his wife's hand with the other. "I'll go back with you tomorrow."